Chapter 49-46. Xiaohua hesitated when he arrived at the teleportation formation leading to the 6th floor. He had already asked about the teleportation formation in Tong Lake City, and he knew that there were a total of 18 large-scale teleportation formations and 4 long-distance teleportation formations that could lead to various places in the Heaven Alliance. According to Xiaohua's previous plan, he would use the teleportation formation leading to Border City to the Jiaping Immortal Alliance, and then use the other teleportation formations to head to Million Mountains. However, at this moment, he suddenly recalled the words of the Tong Lake City disciple when he first took the teleportation formation. At that time, the Tong Lake City disciple heard Xiaohua mention the failure of the Tong Lake Immortal Alliance and wanted to send Xiaohua to the 6th floor. Xiaohua didn't pay much attention to it before, but now that he thought about it, he was surprised. Therefore, he thought for a moment and stepped into the teleportation formation leading to the 6th floor. Upon entering the 6th floor, Xiaohua didn't see the situation around him at all. He was immediately surrounded by a group of cultivators. Xiaohua was stunned. He thought that the cultivators had discovered something, but when he saw the direction they were facing, he suddenly realized something. The cultivators surrounding Xiaohua weren't facing Xiaohua. Instead, they were facing him from the side. Everyone's gazes were focused on the front. In front of them, there were a dozen Tong Lake City disciples in armor blocking them. One of the disciples even said, "Fellow Taoists, please listen to what I have to say. The Tong Lake City's auction has been closed by the City Lord's order. It's meaningless for you to go to the 9th floor. We just want to take a look." A slightly tall cultivator shouted excitedly, "Why didn't you inform us earlier that something so important had happened in the Tong Lake auction house? Did you think that we didn't have enough crystals to bid?" That's right. We also want to take a look. Perhaps there will be a miracle." "Sigh, fellow Taoists, I won't hide it from you. Not only did you not know, but even I, and my senior and junior brothers didn't know." The Tong Lake City disciple sighed and said, "I only found out about it after receiving the City Lord's order. Now, everything is too late. Since Tong Lake City has benefited, you disciples will definitely benefit too. What are you worried about?" A cultivator shouted, "Rogue cultivators without roots like us are the most pitiful. A great opportunity was right in front of us, but we were still deceived by you. I can't say that I'm deceiving him." The disciple didn't dare to let this cultivator continue and quickly said, "It's just that the transfer array to the 9th floor is full and can't be used for the time being. If you must go take a look, then please wait here for a moment. Fellow Taoist, can I trouble you to inquire?" Xiaohua whispered to a cultivator next to him, "What happened?" Sigh, another pitiful soul who missed out on an opportunity. That cultivator looked at Xiaohua and knew that he came up from the 5th floor. He sighed and said, "Do you know that you have already missed an unparalleled immortal opportunity?" What do you mean, fellow Taoist? I've only just arrived at this place from the 5th level, how could I have missed such an unparalleled opportunity?" Xiaohua was greatly shocked and asked hurriedly. "That's right. If you didn't go to the 5th floor and directly went to the 9th floor to participate in the auction, you would have already stepped onto the path of cultivation to become a supreme cultivator." That cultivator really knew how to swindle. His words caused Xiaohua's heart to boil a little. Xiaohua pretended to be puzzled and asked, fellow Taoist, quick, what's going on?" That cultivator vividly recounted the events that transpired in the auction hall. Several enthusiastic cultivators nearby also added oil and vinegar to the story, causing Xiaohua to be completely dumbstruck as he listened to the story. In this cultivator's words, Xiaohua was not only a senior who bestowed cultivation methods, but also a fool who bestowed all kinds of pill formulas, pills, and even peerless magic treasures. And this fool who came out of nowhere even raised a few mid-Mahayana cultivators who had been stuck at a bottleneck for hundreds of years to late Mahayana stage with a wave of his hand. After kowtowing, these late Mahayana stage cultivators immediately left Tong Lake City to find a place to transcend their tribulation. Fellow Taoist, don't you think this is an unparalleled immortal opportunity? In the end, that cultivator said with a pained expression, "If we didn't stop at other places and arrived at the auction hall a step earlier, we would be," just as he said this, the Tong Lake City disciple guarding the transportation array called out, "All right, the transportation array to the 9th floor is already somewhat empty. Fellow Taoists, don't worry, come one by one." Seeing the Tong Lake City disciple move to the side, how could the cultivators, who had long been dazzled by the immortal opportunity, care about anything else? They all rushed into the transportation array. Although the cultivator who had spoken to Xiao Hua was still quite a distance away from the transportation array, he still abandoned Xiao Hua and rushed to the front of the crowd. Crazy, crazy. Xiao Hua shook his head helplessly. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was rushing to the transportation array, he quietly drifted away and left the noisy crowd. Easily leaving the crowd, he saw a wide scarlet waterway in front of him. The waterway flowed calmly towards various islands and pavilions. Xiao Hua stepped on the waterway and casually walked for a while before stepping into a pavilion. The 6th floor of the store was clearly different from the 5th floor. It sold items used by nascent soul cultivators. Xiao Hua casually bought some items and asked the cultivator who had greeted him, "This old man wants to ask, the disciples of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance seem to be on the 6th floor. Where are they?" Senior also wants to go to the Lost Land for adventure?" The cultivator who was only in the essence refining stage asked with a smile. "Ah." Hearing this cultivator's words, Xiao Hua couldn't help but be shocked. Oh. Could it be, this junior said something wrong? Seeing Xiao Hua's expression change, the disciple couldn't help but feel nervous and hastily asked. Xiao Hua calmed down and waved his hand, "It's nothing." "How did you know?" Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't get angry, the disciple mustered up his courage and said, "Senior may not know, but during the days when the Defeat You Immortal Alliance was in my Tong Lake City's 6th floor sale pavilion, many seniors came to inquire. Actually, it's nothing much. Under the changes in the world's spiritual energy, cultivators everywhere have reached a dead end in their cultivation. As long as there is a trace of life, there will be people who will go and probe it. Although the Lost Land has lost Tao techniques, perhaps the world's spiritual energy hasn't changed. When we get there, not only can we low-level cultivators be seniors, we can also cultivate. Isn't that killing two birds with one stone? If this junior wasn't qualified, this junior would also go to the sale pavilion to register. What? Do I still need qualifications? Xiao Hua pushed the boat with the current. This old man heard about this matter on the 4th floor, so I came to take a look. This old man still doesn't know what qualifications are needed. Senior, are you a nascent soul or nascent soul cultivator? The disciple asked. Xiao Hua ignored the disciple's question and said, "You don't need to know what kind of cultivator this old man is. Just tell me what qualifications are needed." Yes, this junior was reckless. The disciple didn't dare to ask again and hurriedly replied, "This junior heard that the Defeat You Immortal Alliance needs Jin Dan and nascent soul cultivators, and also needs nascent soul cultivators and spirit returning cultivators. If you cultivate nascent soul, you can also cultivate nascent soul early stage. It's best if you are a male cultivator, not a female cultivator, unless the female cultivator's 5 elements escape technique is extremely outstanding." Oh. Xiao Hua was surprised and asked, "Since we are going to the Lost Land, naturally the higher the cultivation, the better. Why do we need these mid and low-level cultivators?" The disciple replied, "It seems that it's because it's extremely difficult to pass through some transmission tunnel in the Wuming mountain range. There is a restriction of magic power. If you are a low-level cultivator, it's easy to die, but if you are a high-level cultivator, it's possible to damage the transmission tunnel." However, this junior also heard a lot of rumors and can't be considered true. If senior wants to go, you can go to the sale pavilion to take a look. Oh, right, this junior has a protective magic treasure here. Whether it's cultivating nascent soul or nascent soul, it can be used. Forget about the magic treasure. This old man still wants to live for a few more days. Why would I go to the Lost Land for no reason? Xiao Hua waved his hand and prepared to leave. Yes, what senior said is very true. Just now, this junior received news that an immortal has already bestowed the nascent soul cultivation method on the 9th floor's auction ground. Senior might as well go and take a look, maybe there will be an immortal fate. The disciple hurriedly smiled and sent Xiao Hua out of the shop. He said, if you can really get an immortal cultivation method, you won't be afraid of any changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Why would you go to the lost land? Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua laughed. He already knew how the rumors came about. He said, this old man will go and see if there is any immortal fate. When this old man has an immortal fate, this old man will definitely come back and repay you generously. Thank you, Senior, thank you, Senior. The cultivator said and muttered in his heart, this should be the 49th person. I don't know which Senior will be able to get an immortal fate to repay me. In short, there is nothing wrong with casting a wide net. Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't go back to look for some illusory immortal fate. He turned to the Scarlet Water Path, and after asking around a little, he found out the location of the sail pavilion. After following the flow of the water for a while, he saw a pavilion that really looked like a white sail in the distance. Xiao Hua knew that this was the sail pavilion. Xiao Hua stepped into the sail leader pavilion and looked around. It was a bit different from the Changlin pavilion from before. The inside of this pavilion was similar to the hall of an ordinary house. There were several pillars supporting the pavilion. On the left side of the pillars, there were some fragrant spiritual herbs. Near the walls, there were some scarlet rattans. These rattans were like burning flames that covered a part of the wall, looking quite eye-catching. There were several jade tables in the hall, placed at the front and on both sides. There were some spiritual fruits and spiritual tea on the jade tables. Behind the jade tables, there were some praying mats. However, the spiritual fruits were somewhat damaged, the praying mats were somewhat messy, and even the spiritual tea was already cold. Is there anyone here? Xiao Hua stood in the hall and didn't release his spiritual sense. Instead, he shouted, P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote a monthly vote a recommendation vote, collect a collection, reward, and thank all forms of support. These past few days, too many seniors have come to the sail pavilion to inquire. The four of us have been a bit busy, so after sending off a few seniors, we took a walk outside while we were at it. Senior, please take a seat. As Bai Junfeng spoke, he gave Gao Zhuang and the rest a look and said, Junior brothers and junior sisters, quickly tidy up the sail pavilion. In a while, there will be many seniors coming over again. Yes. Gao Zhuang replied and stepped forward to clean up. Yu Biqiong said with a smile, Senior, please wait a moment. Junior will prepare some fresh spirit fruits for Senior. I guarantee that Senior has never tasted them before, don't be in such a hurry. Don't be in such a hurry. Xiao Hua said with a smile, this old man just heard that you all came from the Failure Valley Immortal Union and said something about going to the lost place. This old man was curious, so I came to take a look. Oh? Where did Senior hear it from? Bai Junfeng asked with a smile. Xiao Hua didn't hide anything and said, just now, in a shop on the 5th floor. Bai Junfeng's face suddenly lit up, and he looked at the proud figure of Yu Biqiong. The two of them exchanged a look, and Bai Junfeng became even more enthusiastic and said, Senior, since we've come here, then it must be fate. Senior, please take a seat and listen to Junior's explanation. No need. Xiao Hua said with slight impatience, this old man came out for a walk because my cultivation has been stagnant for a long time. If there aren't any opportunities in Tong Lake City, then this old man will go to other places to travel. Hee. Since Senior wants to travel, why don't you go to the lost place to take a look? Yu Biqiong was originally going to take the spirit fruit, but after hearing Xiao Hua's words, she simply stopped and waved her hand at Yi Yun, indicating for her to take it. Xiao Hua said with a smile, don't try to deceive this old man. It's not like this old man doesn't know about the lost place. It's also called the Forgotten Place. It's a place where Taoism is barren, so what's there to see? Sigh, Senior, you're muddle-headed. Yu Biqiong said with a regretful expression, your impression is still stuck at the time before the spiritual qi of heaven and earth changed. Although Taoism is flourishing in my heavenly alliance now, but the path of cultivation has already come to an end. If there aren't any miracles, I'm afraid it won't be long before Taoism will decline and all Taoism will cease to flourish. Bai Junfeng struck while the iron was hot and said, Senior, we're all gold core cultivators, so we don't dare to talk about Senior's cultivation. However, I've heard from the nascent soul cultivators in the Immortal Alliance that they haven't made any progress in their cultivation for hundreds of years. Their lifespan is almost at its end. If there aren't any breakthroughs, I'm afraid all living beings will. At this point, Bai Junfeng didn't say anything more. He and Yu Biqiong both looked at Xiao Hua without blinking, quietly observing Xiao Hua's expression. Xiao Hua's expression was as expected by the two of them, gradually giving birth to loneliness. After a while, Xiao Hua sighed and said, Sigh, isn't that so? I'm still a rogue cultivator, so I can't compare to those who have sects or aristocratic family disciples. I'm really helpless. So, Senior, why don't you go to the lost place to take a look? Yu Biqiong took advantage of the situation and said, I heard that because the lost place is separated from my heavenly alliance by the Wuming Mountain Range, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth didn't affect that place. If we can go there, we can cultivate there quietly. While they were talking, Yi Yun had already brought over the spirit fruits and spirit wine, carefully placing them on a jade table, and then stood respectfully to the side without saying anything. Senior, please sit down. Yu Biqiong stopped and said with a smile, This is the special product of my Li Yu Immortal Alliance, the spirit fruit of separation and gathering. It's quite useful for nourishing the meridians, and the taste is also quite good. Senior, please try it first. Xiao Hua agreed and sat down. Bai Junfeng hurriedly raised the wine pot and poured a cup of wine that looked a little yellow, and said, Senior, please try this spirit wine, the taste is also different from ordinary. Xiao Hua ate a few spirit fruits and drank a cup of spirit wine, and said with a smile, Don't worry, I have a question. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, reward it, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 49-48. Senior, if you have any questions, please ask. Yu Biqiong hurriedly replied, I'll tell you everything I know. If the Lost Land has so many benefits, why don't you go there yourself? Instead, you come to Tong Lake City and Tong Cheong Immortal Alliance to find a fated person? Xiao Hua's mouth was full of disdain, as if he had found something strange. Alas, Senior, you don't know. Bai Junfeng sighed, Do you think the cultivators of Tong Cheong Immortal Alliance don't want to go to the Lost Land? After the spiritual chi of heaven and earth changed, more than 10,000 cultivators have tried to pass through the innate restriction formation in Wuming Mountain. Unfortunately, according to the seniors who escaped, the transmission tunnel is too dangerous. Damn it. Before Bai Junfeng could finish, Xiao Hua immediately stood up from the futon and said, How can I go to such a dangerous place? This opportunity should be left to others. Senior, don't worry. Xiao Hua's action seemed to be within Bai Junfeng's expectation. He smiled and said, Let me finish, Senior, and then you can make a decision. Okay then. Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment, then sat down and picked up the spirit fruit to eat. The transmission tunnel is too dangerous, and most of the seniors have died in it. Bai Junfeng continued to say, however, according to the seniors who escaped, the transmission tunnel seems to have less effect on some cultivators with special divine powers and special constitutions, but they don't know what they are. So, the Immortal Alliance sent us to the Heavenly Alliance to find these special cultivators. You don't even know what divine powers and special constitutions are, so why are you looking for cultivators? Xiao Hua asked with interest. Of course, we don't have to think about it. Yu Biqiong hurriedly said, The Alliance Master has prepared some tests. When all the seniors are gathered, we'll return to the Immortal Alliance and invite all the seniors to participate in the tests. So, Senior, please don't worry. If you can't pass the tests, you don't have to risk your life in Million Meng Mountain. If you can pass the tests, it means that you have the possibility of passing through the transmission tunnel in Million Meng Mountain. That's why we sent you to Million Meng Mountain. Of course, even if Senior doesn't pass the test, Lord Alliance Leader will definitely reward Senior generously to thank Senior for defeating the Immortal Alliance. Bai Junfeng continued to bluff. If Senior's physique is suitable, then there's no need to talk about it. The Lost Land, I heard that the Taoist sects there have long since declined, and the strongest cultivators there are only golden core cultivators. If Senior goes there, you'll definitely be a supreme existence. They really can't compare to the tens of thousands of nascent soul realm seniors of the Immortal Alliance. Although those seniors have fallen, they were brave enough to explore and create a new direction for the Immortal Alliance, for the future of the Heavenly Alliance's cultivators. Even if they have fallen, they still live in our hearts. Those cowardly seniors, even if they are alive, what's the difference between them and death? Yi Yun was originally listening at the side, but when she heard this, she frowned slightly, as if she couldn't listen anymore. Her body moved slightly, and she said, "Senior, please wait a moment, Junior will bring some spirit tea for Senior." Then, she floated to the back of the pavilion. After talking for so long. When Xiao Hua heard this, he unconsciously stood up and said with a smile, "So you haven't found a single cultivator? If that's the case, why am I here? Even if I want to go to the Lost Land, I just need to go to Million Mountain Meng and find some teleportation tunnel to go there. Why should I follow you? Isn't this a waste of time?" Senior. Bai Junfeng hurriedly chased over and said, "You don't know, but that teleportation tunnel is very hidden. Without my Lord Alliance Master personally opening it, others will never find it. Moreover, if you go to the Lost Land alone, won't you be weak alone? My Immortal Alliance will find some cultivators to go with you." Seeing that Xiao Hua was about to leave, Yu Biqiong chased after him for a few steps, but stopped again, and her face showed disappointment. At this moment, outside the sail pavilion, a cultivator walked in and shouted, "Where are the disciples of the Immortal Alliance? Are you going to the Lost Land?" He, another one who was tricked. Xiao Hua smiled slightly, but didn't stop. His gaze swept over the cultivator, and he muttered in his heart and was about to walk out. However, when Xiao Hua's gaze swept over the cultivator's face, Xiao Hua suddenly froze in place as if he was struck by lightning. His face was filled with shock, and he looked at the newcomer in disbelief. In his heart, he wildly shouted, How could it be him?" He saw that this cultivator was at the middle nascent soul stage. His body was robust, and his face was like a full moon. His lips were red and his teeth were white. His eyes flashed with an intimidating aura. Between his slanted eyebrows, there was an indescribable self-confidence and arrogance that was like a supreme decoration, and it gave this cultivator a kind of infection for no reason. Although this cultivator's appearance was very unfamiliar to Xiao Hua, when Xiao Hua looked at him, another image involuntarily appeared in his mind. That image was completely different from the young cultivator's appearance. Instead, it was a short, even slightly hunchbacked, late Foundation establishment stage old man with a face full of wrinkles. Although these two people's appearances were completely different, when Xiao Hua saw this cultivator, he immediately connected this cultivator with the old man. Bai Fei. Changbai Sex Bai Fei? Xiao Hua was surprised, and thought to himself, how could it be him? Could it be that I'm mistaken? When I left the Dawn Rain continent, I saw him in the Thousand Red Mountains. At that time, he was only a late Foundation establishment stage cultivator. How could he have reached the middle nascent soul stage in just a few hundred years? Oh, that's not right. He seems to be at the middle nascent soul stage, but he used a secret technique to conceal his cultivation method. In fact, he's already a late nascent soul stage cultivator. Furthermore, how could he have come to the Yi Lin continent from the Dawn Rain continent? Then the Million Meng Mountains. When he thought of this, Xiao Hua couldn't help but laugh. Only the heavenly Tao knew about one's fate. How could others guess it? He had traveled from the Dawn Rain continent to the three continents, and then from the three continents to the Yi Lin continent. Furthermore, he was already a grand ascension stage cultivator of the human race. Bai Fei had merely traveled from the Dawn Rain continent to the Yi Lin continent, and had only cultivated to the late nascent soul stage. What was so strange about that? Xiao Hua's astonishment naturally attracted the attention of the newcomer. The newcomer stopped and coldly glanced at Xiao Hua. He maintained a certain distance and didn't say anything. fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said with a smile, you should turn back. Don't be deceived by them. I originally wanted to go to the Lost Land to try my luck, but when I came here, I found that I didn't have a single fellow Taoist with me. Although I don't know much about the affairs of the crippled Immortal Alliance, I can tell the truth just by looking at how few people there are. Whether it's the truth or not, I'll only know after I hear it. There's no need for fellow Taoist to worry about that. The cultivator indifferently replied, if fellow Taoist wants to go, you can stay. If fellow Taoist doesn't want to go, you can leave. That's right, senior. Bai Junfeng hurriedly said, look, another senior who understands. Why don't you reconsider? Now that the Heavenly Alliance has truly reached a dead end, going to the Lost Land is indeed a very good solution. On the other side, Yu Biqiong also stepped forward and respectfully said, Junior Yu Biqiong welcomes Senior. If Senior doesn't mind, please come in first. Junior will explain everything to Senior. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you for all of your support. Chapter 49-49. Xiao Hua wanted to leave and go to Wuming Mountain to find the transmission tunnel, but since he saw that the person was most likely Bai Fei, how could he let him go? He hesitated and nodded, fine, I'll listen to how you're going to convince fellow Taoist Bai. I'm Bai Fei, how should I address you? The cultivator who had yet to confirm whether or not it was Bai Fei raised his eyebrows at this moment, as if he was not at a disadvantage at all. This question immediately exposed his identity. I'm Taoist Xiao. Xiao Hua smiled and cupped his hands, greetings, fellow Taoist Bai. Ah. Taoist Xiao. Cultivator Bai was shocked, just as shocked as Xiao Hua. His figure was also stunned on the spot, his eyes staring straight at Xiao Hua as he sized him up. Moreover, a strange light appeared in his eyes, and in particular, a kind of faint and rather strange origin sense was also born from this cultivator and landed on Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua was stunned and asked curiously, what's wrong? Fellow Taoist Bai, have you seen I before? Oh, no wonder, I also felt that you looked familiar, as if I've seen you before. Where are you from, fellow Taoist Bai? Where are you from, Taoist Xiao? Bai Fei nodded, I do know a Taoist Xiao, but his appearance is different from yours, and his cultivation should not be as high as yours. Damn it, who has the same Dharma name as I? Xiao Hua scolded jokingly, I thought this Dharma name was unique in the Heavenly Alliance. No, I want to change my Dharma name. That's not necessary. Bai Fei smiled, maybe I remembered wrongly, maybe the Taoist Xiao I know is you? I'm a rogue cultivator from Guangxing Immortal Alliance's Yuqiong Mountain. Near Yuqiong Mountain, I am the only one other than Shenmingjiao. It's not a big deal that fellow Taoist Bai has heard of I's name, maybe we've seen each other when we were traveling. Xiao Hua said proudly, moreover, the Alliance Master of the Guangxing Immortal Union passed by Yuqiong Mountain several times and even paid I a visit. Seeing Xiao Hua show off like this, Bai Fei lost interest all at once. He said smilingly, so, fellow Taoist is that famous Taoist Xiao. This Bai really has a thunderous reputation. It seems like we've met in the vicinity of Mount Yuqiong. Well said. Xiao Hua's interest was piqued, and he said with a smile, since you and I are old acquaintances, and now that we meet in Tong Lake City, how can we not drink and chat merrily? Bai Junfeng, quickly bring out the spirit wine of the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance. Yes, Junior Bai Junfeng greets Senior Bai. Bai Junfeng replied and hurriedly bowed to Bai Fei. Oh, your surname is Bai too? According to the secular world, we were a family 500 years ago. Bai Fei said with a smile as he helped Bai Junfeng up. Senior must be joking. Bai Junfeng said with a smile, that's what the secular world says. This junior is nearly 500 years old this year. If we were a family 500 years ago, this junior would be overjoyed. With a nascent soul cultivator like senior in the clan, this junior wouldn't need to worry about cultivation. Come, seniors, please take a seat. This junior will prepare the wine. Then, Bai Junfeng shouted towards the outside of the pavilion, Gao Zhuang, quickly bring some more spirit wine and spirit fruits over. Okay. Gao Zhuang replied and waited for Xiao Hua and Bai Fei to sit down. Yi Yun walked out with a tray in her hand with 2 jade pots on it. Just as Yi Yun walked out, her gaze landed on Bai Fei. Her proud and aloof face revealed a pleasantly surprised expression as she couldn't help but cry out, Senior. Senior Bai. Ah. Bai Fei was also shocked. He turned to look at Yi Yun and hurriedly stood up, so it's Miss Yi. You. Why are you in Tong Lake City? Oh, this Bai understands. Senior Bai, please take a seat. Yi Yun's enthusiasm far exceeded her previous treatment of Xiao Hua. She walked a few steps forward and invited Bai Fei to sit down. She personally poured spirit wine for Bai Fei and said respectfully, this junior is under the orders of the Immortal Alliance to come to Tong Lake City to find Heavenly Alliance cultivators who can pass through the Wuming Mountain Range. Could it be that Senior Bai is also interested in the Lost Land? Oh, this junior understands. At this point, Yi Yun's face also showed a sudden realization. However, as soon as she finished speaking, her face flushed red. Bai Fei's this Bai understands, and now he said this junior understands. It was as if they had a mutual understanding of each other. How could she not blush? Bai Junfeng took the other jade pot from Yi Yun's side and poured spirit wine for Xiao Hua. Then, he smiled and said, Junior Sister Yi, what's going on? Could it be that Junior Sister and this Senior Bai are old acquaintances? Oh, I understand. At this point, Bai Junfeng was slightly stunned. He suddenly looked at Bai Fei as if he had thought of something. Senior brother Bai. Yu Biqiong was a little confused. She shouted angrily, what are you talking about? Yi Yun and Senior Bai seem to be old acquaintances. You said I understand and I said I understand. Naturally, they have a tacit understanding in their hearts. Why did you also say, I understand? Junior Sister Yu, it seems like you've forgotten. Bai Junfeng smiled and said, didn't Junior Sister Yi mention it when we came out of the Defeat Valley Immortal Alliance? Didn't she meet a senior with the surname Bai when she was training at the edge of the Wuming Mountain Range? Oh, that's right, that's right. At this point, Yu Biqiong also remembered and nodded. Junior Sister Yi mentioned this matter a lot. She always said that Senior Bai was a righteous man. So this is the Senior Bai that Junior Sister Yi always mentioned. Sorry. I wouldn't dare. Bai Fei smiled and raised his hand. It was just a coincidence that day. Moreover, the so-called help was nothing more than a small matter for me. It's really nothing. Any cultivator of the Dao sect would lend a helping hand if they encountered such a matter, of course not. Bai Junfeng echoed from the side, Junior Sister Yi clearly described the situation that day. That day was really dangerous, and if it wasn't for Senior's profound cultivation, I'm afraid Junior Sister Yi would not be able to stand here safely. Senior Bai. Yi Yun's face was slightly red. She raised her wine cup and said shyly, I left in a hurry that day. This junior didn't have the chance to thank you. Today, I'll borrow this wine to thank Senior for saving my life that day. Miss Yi is too polite. Bai Fei smiled and took the wine cup. As he spoke, he drank it in one gulp. After drinking the spirit wine, Bai Fei asked with concern, Miss Yi, where's your Qing Wan? I remember that it was seriously injured that day. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 4950. Thank you Senior for your concern, Qing Wan is fine now. As Yi Yun spoke, she pointed at the spirit storage ring on her left hand. A clear light gushed out and a Qing Wan flew out from within. The blue Wan landed in mid-air and did not cry out like the other birds. Instead, it stood there proudly with only one leg on the ground while the other leg was hidden within its feathers. Furthermore, the bird's head looked around proudly and its appearance of self-admiration was exactly the same as Yi Yun's from before. Qing Wan, quickly greet Senior Bai. Yi Yun hurriedly whispered, "He was the one who saved us that day. The elixir you took was given by Senior Zhang." Caw. Qing Wan let out a clear cry, as if it knew Bai Fei. It nodded at Bai Fei and then looked around again. However, when Qing Wan's gaze swept past Xiao Hua, it paused for a moment before leaving. "She's a little shy," Yi Yun hurriedly explained to Bai Fei. "Hee, it's fine, it's fine." Bai Fei smiled and waved his hand. Even a spiritual pet has its own freedom and its own preferences. "Don't worry about it, just keep it." "Yes, Senior." Yi Yun nodded apologetically at Bai Fei and kept Qing Wan into the spirit storage ring. Then, the few of them reminisced and whispered about some things. Xiao Hua sat at the side dully. The others treated him as if he was nothing. Xiao Hua was not in a hurry and just listened quietly. However, after a while, he understood some things. This Bai Fei probably had some opportunities to go from Dawn Rain Continent to Yi Lin Continent and saved Yi Yun's life when they passed through Wu Meng Mountain Range. As for why Bai Fei came to defeat Yu Immortal Alliance, it must be for the same reason as him, which was to return to Dawn Rain Continent. Since Bai Fei had the experience of passing through Wu Meng Mountain Range, he might as well follow him. However, looking at Bai Fei's proud look and thinking about Bai Fei's actions during the sword battle, Xiao Hua could not help but sigh. The heavens were fair and he was definitely not the only lucky person in this world. Whether it was Dawn Rain Continent, Yilin Continent or the Three Continents, there were lucky people. They all relied on opportunities that ordinary people could not reach and reached the peak of the world. Bai Fei was obviously one of them. "Spiritual Master Xiao, please." While Xiao Hua was distracted, Bai Fei suddenly raised his wine cup and gestured. "Hee, all right, fellow Taoist Bai, please." Xiao Hua smiled faintly, raised his wine cup, and drained it in one gulp. Everyone seemed to have finished exchanging pleasantries, and Yi Yun asked, "Senior White, did you come to the Sail Pavilion to explore the Lost Land?" Bai Fei nodded and replied, "Miss Yi is right. Actually, when I met Miss Yi all those years ago, I was heading to the Lost Lands to gain experience and tempering. It's just that I didn't get permission from the Alliance Master of Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance, so I didn't use the teleportation tunnel. I want to try going in from other places in the Wumeng Mountain Range." "Senior White, you're really bold." Yu Baiqiong stuck out her tongue and said, "Without a teleportation tunnel, even my Lord Alliance Master wouldn't dare to go there." "That's right." Bai Fei smiled and said, "I suffered a great loss in Wumeng Mountain Range. When I saw that the situation was not good, I hurriedly turned back and met Miss Yi. And these days, I went to many places to gain experience. Recently, I felt that under the changes in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, there was no way out for cultivation, so I thought of the Lost Lands. As soon as I arrived in Tong Lake City, I heard that the Defeat You Immortal Alliance was looking for a fated nascent soul cultivator, so I came here. It seems that Senior White is determined to enter the Lost Lands." Bai Junfeng said, intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Xiao Hua and asked, "Since that's the case, I don't need to tell Senior White about the Defeat You Immortal Alliance's intentions, right?" "No." Bai Fei said very cautiously, "I still want to hear more, I'll have to trouble you." "No problem." Bai Junfeng smiled, looked at Yi Yun and said, "I just told Spiritual Master Xiao once, and now my mouth is dry. Why don't I let Junior Sister Yi tell Senior White? Does Miss Yi have time?" Bai Fei was very polite, looking completely different from the hunchbacked, wrinkled old man from before. Yi Yun smiled, nodded and said, "Junior is very willing to serve Senior White." After that, Bai Junfeng gave Yu Biqiong a meaningful glance, and the two of them walked out of the Sail Pavilion. The simple and honest Gao Zhuang came over and stood by Xiao Hua's side, whereas, Yi Yin explained to Bai Fei the plan to defeat the Immortal Alliance this time. Yi Yin might not have said as much as Bai Junfeng, but the beautiful woman's explanation was naturally different from the stinky man's. Her breath was like an orchid, and her smile was like the sun. Even Xiao Hua, who was watching and listening at the side, was slightly moved. Looking up at Gao Zhuang, who was standing beside him like a block of wood, he couldn't help but drink by himself. After Yi Yun finished speaking, Bai Fei frowned and thought for a moment, then asked, I wonder what the Defeat You Immortal Alliance's test is? And when is it? Junior is not too sure about this. Yi Yun said apologetically, according to what Junior knows, the Alliance Master values this matter very much, and has already urged several times. I'm afraid it will be in the last few years. However, there are not many nascent soul cultivators who are willing to go to the lost place, and it seems that there are even fewer cultivators who can pass the test. Therefore, Junior is worried that this trip to the lost place will be successful. While they were talking, Bai Junfeng and Yu Biqiong hurriedly walked in. Their gazes fell on Xiao Hua and Bai Fei, and they said apologetically, Seniors, Junior has just received the Alliance Master's order to go to the border city of the World Peng Immortal Alliance to wait for orders. I don't know if the two seniors have thought it through, but if you are willing to go to the Defeat You Immortal Alliance with us, then you will have to leave now. Of course, if the two seniors are not willing, Junior will not dare to force you. Junior thanks Senior for coming to the Sail Pavilion. This. Xiao Hua pretended to hesitate. Could it be that the two of us have to go? Yi Yun, who had not spoken to Xiao Hua until now, said, Senior, we have already sent several nascent soul cultivators to the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. This time, only the two of you will be going to Tong Lake City. Moreover, since you are going to the border city to wait for orders, there will definitely be nascent soul cultivators from other places. Senior, please be at ease. Taoist Master Xiao. Bai Fei said with a smile, now that the Yilin continent's weather has changed greatly, it is no longer suitable for us Taoist cultivators to cultivate. Going to the lost place is actually a very good idea. You heard it just now. I have wanted to go take a look a few years ago. Now that the Alliance Master of the Immortal Alliance has arranged it and there are many fellow Taoists with us, it is much more stable. If we miss this opportunity, I'm afraid we won't have it in the future. Anyway, I have already decided to go. What about you? This old man is still not sure. Xiao Hua said hesitantly, this old man feels that there is something fishy about this matter. How about this? Bai Fei stood up and said, in any case, we can only go to the lost place after we arrive at the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. Why don't fellow Taoist come with us first and think about it carefully on the way? If fellow Taoist doesn't want to go, you can leave at any time. How about it? This idea is not bad. Xiao Hua smiled and stood up, replying, let's do as fellow Taoist Bai says. Good. Bai Junfeng clapped his hands and said, this junior will go and arrange the transportation array to Border City. This old man will go with you. Xiao Hua probed. Bai Junfeng hurriedly waved his hand and said, how can that be? Senior is a guest of our Defeat You Immortal Alliance. How can this junior let senior help? All right. Xiao Hua nodded. Yu Biqiong immediately walked over and said with a smile, just now, I heard from senior that you are a loose cultivator of the Guanqing Immortal Alliance's Jade Mountain. This junior also went to Jade Mountain in the early years. I wonder how the scenery of Jade Mountain is now. Jade Mountain was something that Xiao Hua casually made up. How could there be a Jade Mountain in the Guanqing Immortal Alliance? If Yu Biqiong didn't have anything to say, then she was intentionally probing. Xiao Hua didn't mind and casually talked about some scenery. At the same time, he also talked about some things about Shenming cult that he heard from the banished monarch. At the same time that Yu Biqiong nodded repeatedly, Xiao Hua noticed that although Bai Fei was talking to Yi Yun, he had been listening to him attentively. Obviously, he didn't completely trust him. Hee. Xiao Hua laughed in his heart, this Bai Fei must be crazily scheming in his heart right now. If this Xiao is Xiao Hua, this Xiao will definitely avoid using my Daoist name after knowing that he is Bai Fei. I won't say Daoist Xiao. But if this Xiao is not Xiao Hua, how can there be two cultivators with the same Daoist name in this world? Furthermore, this Xiao's cultivation was unfathomable back then, which made him deeply afraid. Since he could come to the Yilin continent and this Xiao disappeared many years ago, it's not strange for me to appear here now. He must have already suspected something. Of course, if this Xiao doesn't call himself Daoist Xiao, nothing will happen. But, does this Xiao care about this? In just the time it takes to brew a cup of tea, Bai Junfeng turned back and said with a smile on his face, "This junior has already contacted Tong Lake City. From the 6th level, there is a transportation passage directly to the underground transportation Grand Array. That super long transportation Grand Array to the Guangxing Immortal Alliance will be activated after half a smoke. We can go there now." "Io, this old man has never enjoyed such treatment before," Xiao Hua said in a slightly exaggerated manner, "to actually go directly to the underground transportation Grand Array from the 6th level. Hee, these two seniors are the honored guests of my Tongyu Immortal Alliance. Serving these two seniors well is my responsibility." Bai Junfeng replied without blushing or skipping a beat. Xiao Hua had long been cursing in his heart. He had already heard clearly that there was no such thing as an alliance head token. It was just Bai Junfeng discussing with Yu Biqiong via voice transmission. He felt that since a modified cultivation technique had appeared in Tong Lake City, there wouldn't be any more nascent soul cultivators who would be willing to go to the Lost Lands in the future. Since that was the case, it was better to bring him and that Bai Fei back to the Immortal Alliance. As for the transportation passage, it was purely because Bai Junfeng was afraid that he and Bai Fei would hear the news that had already spread in Tong Lake City. He was afraid that he or Bai Fei would retreat. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 49-51. However, Bai Junfeng was overthinking things. Xiao Hua didn't know what the others were thinking, but he knew his and Bai Fei's purpose. They wanted to return to the Dawn Rain continent, to return to the lost land mentioned by the Heaven Alliance cultivators. They didn't know about the modified cultivation method, but even if they did, the modified cultivation method wouldn't stop them from returning to their homeland. When they arrived at the transportation channel on the 6th floor, the previously packed transportation channel was now empty. The transportation channels on the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors were all closed, and only the downward transportation channel was open. When Bai Junfeng showed a token, the Tong Lake City disciple didn't even bother to look at Xiao Hua and the others and invited them into the transportation channel. With a flash of light, the pressure of the transportation channel disappeared, and Xiao Hua and the others were in a space less than 100 feet wide. There was only one transportation channel in this space, and there was no one else except Xiao Hua and the others. Even the guards of Tong Lake City weren't there. "Seniors, this way please." Bai Junfeng seemed to be very familiar with this place. He raised his hand and led everyone out of the space through the light curtain. As soon as they were out of the space, a series of rumbling sounds came. Xiao Hua looked up and couldn't help but be speechless. This was a space that was dozens of acres large, and it was filled with transportation channels of various sizes. Each transportation channel had a restriction that was used to isolate sound and the power of the transportation channel. Even so, the rumbling sound still came from everywhere and rippled throughout the entire space. In particular, the residual power of the transportation channel also came along with the rumbling sounds, tearing the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the entire space. At this time, there weren't many cultivators in the entire underground transportation channel, and only a few Tong Lake City disciples were on duty. When Bai Junfeng led everyone to the innermost transportation channel, which was more than 100 feet wide, Xiao Hua couldn't help but sigh again. This was because there was a faint terrifying aura coming from this transportation channel. A pitch-black vortex gradually formed in the activated transportation channel, and the entire transportation channel was like a huge space beast with its bloody mouth wide open, waiting for its prey to appear. Naturally, there were disciples of Tong Lake City in front of the teleportation bridge. However, their guard was similarly lax. When they saw the token that Bai Junfeng took out, they put it away and gave each of Xiao Hua and the others a teleportation talisman. Then, they signaled for them to enter the teleportation formation. When Xiao Hua and the others activated the teleportation talisman, the Tong Lake City disciples also activated the teleportation array. Rumble. Huge rumbling sounds came from all around the teleportation array. The teleportation array, which had already turned into a void, produced thick lightning, and a kind of teleportation pressure that seemed like the sky was falling and the earth was rending rushed over from all directions. Whoosh! The activated teleportation talisman immediately produced a black and white screen of light that covered the entire area. The lightning in the void turned into a black and white wave that rolled, and the figures of Xiao Hua and the others disappeared. The teleportation took a very long time, almost half a day. Moreover, this teleportation array was different from the teleportation arrays that Xiao Hua had encountered before. The normal teleportation channel's pressure was generally stable, but this teleportation channel's pressure was either big or small. When it was big, it would almost squash people, and the transmission talisman would almost be crushed. When it was small, it would almost make people fly, and the transmission talisman would also have a kind of flying feeling, which made Xiao Hua feel uncomfortable. However, to Xiao Hua, who had experience in breaking through the barrier, this was merely a feeling of discomfort. It was not like Bai Junfeng and the other golden core cultivators who wanted to live or die. What surprised Xiao Hua was that Bai Fei, who had not revealed his strength before, also felt like he was handling a butcher's cleaver with ease in this vast teleportation channel. He did not feel particularly uneasy. Seeing the teleportation pressure gradually extinguish the brilliance of the teleportation talisman like a large hand, Yi Yun and the others' figures gradually collapsed in the teleportation array. In the void near Xiao Hua and the others, in the channel that seemed to be radiating light in all directions, tens of thousands of rings of light suddenly surged out. These rings of light were like swimming fishes, and also like brilliant fireworks. Then, the entire ring of light shattered above Xiao Hua and the others' heads. When Xiao Hua and the others felt their bodies lighten, the shattered rings of light instantly reformed, and another teleportation array emitted a powerful rumbling sound. Welcome everyone to Border City. Without waiting for Xiao Hua and the others to come out of the teleportation array, a seemingly graceful female cultivator was already at the teleportation array's position. She lightly opened her red lips and welcomed them with a smile. After coming out of the teleportation array, Bai Junfeng, Yu Biqiong, Yi Yun, and Gao Zhuang's legs slightly weakened, and they actually showed signs of being unable to stand steadily. Moreover, Yi Yun's figure swayed, as if she was about to fall. Bai Fei hurriedly raised his hand and supported Yi Yun, a trace of concern in his eyes. Many thanks, Senior. Yi Yun's face was somewhat pale as she said in a low voice. However, Bai Fei did not pay attention to Yi Yun. Instead, there was a trace of astonishment on his face as he looked at Xiao Hua, who was completely fine. Bai Junfeng stood for a moment and regulated his true essence. Then, he opened his mouth and said with a bitter smile, I've long heard that the teleportation array from Tong Lake City to Border City is the strangest. Not to mention the long distance, even the void through which the teleportation passes is different from other places. Even golden core cultivators can't withstand the changes in the teleportation pressure inside. It seems that this is indeed the case. Taoist Master Xiao is indeed a hidden expert. Bai Fei looked at Xiao Hua and said thoughtfully, in the face of such a fluctuating teleportation pressure, it is as if he is taking a stroll in the park. This Bai is truly impressed. Xiao Hua smiled and looked at Bai Fei as he replied indifferently, we are both mid-nascent soul stage cultivators. Isn't Fellow Bai the same? What Fellow Bai wants to say is also what I want to say. If Fellow Bai admires I, then naturally he admires himself. However, I have to admire Fellow Bai's ability to use words and form sentences. It is truly unfathomable. Bai Fei raised an eyebrow, not understanding what was wrong with what he had just said. Yu Biqiong, on the other hand, chased away the dizziness in her Naiwan palace with great difficulty. She then smiled bitterly and said to the two of them, both of you have profound cultivation and are respected by us juniors. If the two seniors can't even deal with this level of teleportation pressure, then, there is no need to even mention the teleportation tunnel. By the time the six of them had rested for a while, other cultivators had already arrived from various teleportation arrays. These cultivators had varying cultivation bases, but all of them had a trace of excitement on their faces. As soon as they came out of the teleportation array, they immediately rushed into Border City under the greetings of the disciples of Border City. The female disciple who had welcomed Xiaohua and the others earlier was still waiting patiently at the side. Seeing that everyone had already recovered, she smiled like a flower and said, "Seniors, welcome to Border City. Our Border City has all kinds of things that seniors want. In order to ensure that seniors can smoothly purchase things in our Border City, please allow Junior to give seniors a brief introduction. Wait." Bai Juanfeng's gaze retracted from the nearby cultivators and looked at the pale-faced Yi Yun. He asked, "Is there a quiet room next to the teleportation formation for us to rest? We came from Tong Lake City and the teleportation distance is too far. We have yet to recover and would like to rest for 2 hours." "Oh, so seniors came from Tong Lake City. No wonder." The female disciple replied considerately, "Senior, please. Border City's geographical location is a bit special, so we have already considered this aspect. There is a quiet room next to the teleportation formation." Xiaohua looked at the nervousness on Bai Juanfeng's face, and a trace of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, Bai Fei didn't notice Bai Juanfeng's unnaturalness and only looked at Yi Yun with concern. Yi Yun responded with a smile that was somewhat apologetic. Everyone entered the quiet room. Yi Yun, Gao Zhuang, and the others sat cross-legged to adjust their breathing. Bai Fei saw that Yi Yun's face was gradually turning red, and his heart was slightly at ease. He turned to look at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, do you know other escape techniques besides the 5 elements escape technique?" Xiaohua was stunned and somewhat puzzled. He asked back, "Why do you ask this, fellow Taoist Bai?" "Because the 5 elements escape technique is restricted in the Wuming mountain range." Bai Fei replied, "That day, I suffered a great loss because of this and almost died inside. So I want to remind fellow Taoist." "Damn it." Xiaohua cursed in a low voice and said, "No wonder even the Alliance Master of the Defeat Valley Immortal Alliance didn't dare to enter easily. If that's the case, I'm afraid even the Heavenly Alliance's Lord Long Shenxi will hesitate." "Yes, I'm afraid so." Bai Fei nodded and said, "As far as I know, the reason why the lost place was lost is greatly related to the innate restriction formation in the Wuming mountain range. Otherwise, with the Heavenly Alliance's Alliance Master's all-knowing ability, how could he not go to the lost place to have a look? It's not just that, right?" Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and said, "I heard that there are a group of mysterious witchcraft cultivators in the Wuming mountain range. Their methods are connected to ghosts and deities, and they can even penetrate the 9 underworlds. Many of their cultivation techniques are aimed directly at the soul, and it's impossible to guard against them. Seems like fellow Taoist knows a lot about the Wuming mountain range." Bai Fei probed, "No wonder fellow Taoist wants to go to the lost place. Since fellow Taoist Bai wants to go to the lost place again, I presume that you've already learned other escape techniques besides the 5 elements escape technique?" Xiaohua asked, not answering the question directly. "Of course." Bai Fei said proudly, "If not, why would I dare to take the risk again?" "Then fellow Taoist," Xiaohua said in a low voice, "you and I met first, and I'm sure other fellow Taoists will come to meet us in the future. Can you and I work together and support each other in the transmission tunnel?" "Hee, of course I can," Bai Fei replied without hesitation. "But, what benefits does this Bai have?" "Damn." Xiaohua had not heard Bai Fei say this for hundreds of years. Today, when Bai Fei said this, Xiaohua immediately felt like he was in the sword Dao battle again. He could not help but curse in his heart, "Even if I can't tell that you're Bai Fei, based on what you said and your name, I can conclude that you must be Bai Fei from the Changbai sect. Only a cultivator like you who blindly cultivates and uses unscrupulous means to achieve his goal can reach the late stage of the nascent soul realm in these hundreds of years. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and... Chapter 4952. Although Xiaohua's heart was filled with disdain, he still respected Bai Fei's choice. After all, there were hundreds of things in the world, and there were tens of thousands of people. It was impossible to expect others to consider others as much as oneself. It was already quite good that Bai Fei did not do evil things. Therefore, Xiaohua cautiously transmitted his voice. Then what benefits does fellow Daoist Bai want? He, the benefits this Bai wants. I'm afraid you can't give me. Bai Fei replied proudly. Then how do you and I work together? Xiaohua asked somewhat apprehensively. As the two of them were exchanging voice transmissions, Bai Junfeng suddenly got up and looked at Xiaohua and Bai Fei. He nodded apologetically and left in a hurry. Bai Fei looked at Bai Junfeng's back and sent a sound transmission. Daoist Master Xiao, I'm guessing that after Bai Junfeng returns, he will definitely receive another message from the alliance leader of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance, requesting us to continue teleporting. Moreover, he will definitely teleport to a place controlled by the Defeat You Immortal Alliance. Do you believe me? Xiaohua was dumbfounded. He looked at the door of the quiet room, then looked at Yi Yun and the others. He shook his head slightly. How is this possible? We just arrived at Border City according to the Alliance Master's message, and we haven't even left the teleportation formation yet. How can we teleport again? I don't believe it. Alright, go ahead and watch. Bai Fei said confidently. As for the alliance you mentioned, this Bai agrees in principle. As for the benefits, this Bai will tell you when we meet. The reason I'm telling you this now is to let you know that joining hands with me is the best decision you've ever made in your life. How can this guy be so arrogant? Seeing Bai Fei like this, Xiaohua couldn't help but be even more surprised. In fact, he already suspected that this Xiao is Xiaohua in his heart, but he didn't directly ask. Perhaps he wants to distance himself from this Xiao, and doesn't want this Zhao's previous kindness to become a fetter, but he should also understand that this Zhao's cultivation is definitely not inferior to his. Could it be that he still had something to rely on? What kind of shocking fortuitous encounter did Bai Fei have in the past few hundred years? Seeing Xiaohua pondering, Bai Fei smiled faintly and said no more. After a while, Xiaohua finally nodded and said, "All right, I will wait and see." It was unknown whether it was Bai Fei's foresight or Bai Junfeng's insistence on cooperating with Bai Fei, but just as Xiaohua finished speaking, Bai Junfeng came in from outside the quiet room. His sweaty face was filled with apologies. Bai Junfeng bowed to Xiaohua and Bai Fei in embarrassment. "Seniors, I'm truly sorry. This junior just left, because there was a commotion in the communication Dharma artifact. This junior has already received the Alliance leader's order, requesting us to immediately set off. We cannot stay anywhere else and must head directly to Worry-Free Manor." Bai Fei smiled slightly. He glanced at Xiaohua and said, "I don't care. Moreover, looking at Daoist Xiao, you should be fine as well. We'll have to see if Miss Yi and the others can continue to teleport." After Yi Yun and the others heard this, they had already opened their eyes. They looked at Bai Junfeng in confusion. Yu Biqiong's eyes revealed a look of understanding. She then said, "Junior sister Ye's situation is not good. Senior brother Bai, can you wait for a while?" Bai Junfeng smiled and said, "Of course, we can wait for a while. Moreover, I've already asked the disciples of Border City. Although there are dozens of teleportation channels to Worry-Free Manor, they are not connected together. Most of the time, we still have to use flying shuttles. Moreover, these teleportation channels are not very far away. I believe that junior sister Yi will be fine after resting." "That's good." Yu Biqiong looked at Gao Zhuang, who had been silent all this time, and asked, "Senior brother Kuang?" "I'm fine." Gao Zhuang waved his hand. "All right, then let's rest for another hour." Bai Fei made the final decision. Yi Yun was a little embarrassed and said, "I've delayed everyone." It's fine, it's fine." Bai Fei's eyes revealed tenderness and said, "Miss Yi, this is probably an old injury. You need to cultivate more." Sigh. Yi Yun sighed. She didn't say anything else and closed her eyes to adjust her breathing. After an hour, Bai Junfeng took Xiaohua and the others to the Worry-Free Manor. In the next few months, just as Bai Junfeng said, and just as Bai Fei expected, none of the teleportation channels were in big cities. Moreover, the locations of the teleportation channels were relatively remote. The distance between the teleportation channels was sometimes relatively long. It was very common to fly for more than 10 days by flying shuttles. Summer turned to autumn, and winter gradually approached. The fallen leaves in the nearby mountains had already turned yellow, and the unknown wild fruits were also gradually rotting. In the distance, a mountain peak that wasn't too tall appeared on the horizon amidst the fiery red. Seniors. Seeing the fiery red, Bai Juanfeng's heart finally relaxed. He raised his hand and pointed, and said with a smile, "This is the worry-free manor. I'm afraid that we're the first batch of disciples to arrive at the manor." He. Bai Fei had already become the leader. He smiled and said, "We flew east and west, and the teleportation channels we passed through didn't seem to be in a straight line. In the middle, we used flying shuttles to fly for so long, and you're actually the first batch?" Bai Junfeng, how many batches of disciples did your Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance send out? Bai Juanfeng's face didn't show any embarrassment. He replied, "I'll let seniors know." In order to avoid unnecessary trouble and for our safety, Junior had no choice but to rack his brains to find a stable teleportation route. I didn't discuss it with seniors before, so I hope seniors can understand. It's fine. Xiao Hua was originally sitting cross-legged on the flying shuttles, modifying the primordial spirit cultivation technique. At this time, he waved his hand and said, "Anyway, we're not familiar with the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance." Through these few months of understanding, Bai Junfeng knew that Xiao Hua was the easiest to talk to. Hearing Xiao Hua's words, the corner of his mouth rose into a smile. However, just as his smile appeared, rumble. A loud thunderclap sounded from the 9 heavens. Then, in the space of hundreds of thousands of miles, hundreds of millions of lightning bolts were born. These lightning bolts turned into pearls in the thunder, and a will that swept through the heaven and earth like a silver river suddenly fell from the sky, enveloping the entire heaven and earth. Everything came to a standstill in the presence of this will. Seeing the familiar scene, Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. He looked up at the sky in disbelief, where the lightning had turned into multicolored clouds. He wondered in his heart, what's wrong with the Tao's sovereign? Could it be that he's thinking of me again? Following Xiao Hua's surprise, in the sky, beyond the 9 heavens, an old man with a simple appearance, wearing an 8-trigram robe and a Tao crown, stepped on a green lotus and walked down step by step. Tao ancestor? The old man's indomitable figure appeared. When Xiao Hua's gaze fell on that unclear appearance, although the old man's eyes were tightly closed and did not open, an inconceivable thought was born in Xiao Hua's heart. This is the Tao ancestor? The Tao ancestor walked down from the 9 heavens, endless multicolored light flashing around his body. Within the multicolored light, there were also endless illusions. Some were men plowing and women weaving, some were moving mountains and creating seas, and so on. Ethereal immortal music came out from these illusions. No, that's not right. As soon as the Tao ancestor thought of this, Xiao Hua's gaze once again glanced at the old man's flickering appearance. Inadvertently, an extremely familiar face flashed past Xiao Hua's mind. Xiao Hua couldn't help but scream madly in his heart, this is lousy. The saint who disappeared. Why is he here? Unfortunately, this Tao ancestor's phantom was the will of heaven and earth. He didn't answer Xiao Hua's exclamation. However, this Tao ancestor was the same as the previous Tao sovereign. His originally closed eyes opened, and 2 rays of light flashed from his eyes. One was as black as the night, and the other was as white as the day. The 2 rays of light fell on Xiao Hua's body. The Tao ancestor opened his mouth, and a voice like the collapse of mountains and earth rang out, "Good." Along with this voice, the Tao ancestor raised his hand and grabbed, and a horsetail whisk appeared. The horsetail whisk swept towards the sky, and the sky that was originally filled with thunder and lightning instantly became clear. Thousands of stars, as well as the sun and moon, appeared. As the horsetail whisk swept past, thousands of stars fell into the Buddha's dust, and billions of starlight settled in one place. Then, the Tao ancestor opened his mouth, and with a puff, the sun, moon, and stars, even heaven and earth fell into it, condensing into a seed of light and shadow. Tao seed? Xiaohua was stunned. This light and shadow was so familiar, it was exactly the same as the Tao seed bestowed by the Tao's sovereign before. Just as Xiaohua was stunned, the Tao ancestor raised his right hand and pointed at the Tao seed. Rumble. Thousands of inexplicable thunder sounds came from the void, and the profound mysteries of heaven and earth were born and fell into the Tao seed. The entire world was distorted by the profound mysteries. Then, the Tao ancestor flicked his middle finger, and the Tao seed streaked across space and time. The seed that seemed to be bigger than the sky turned into the size of a thumb and fell towards Xiaohua's head. It was exactly the same as when the Tao's sovereign's Tao seed fell. Moreover, as the light and shadow of the seed fell, Xiaohua's physical body also began to fade and melt in this light and shadow, and finally turned into an existence of lines. However, it was slightly different from the last time the Tao seed fell. At this time, in Xiaohua's lower dantian, the scattered nascent soul that had already obtained the Tao seed did not turn into lines. Instead, the scattered nascent soul's figure became more and more plump, and it became more and more spirited. Moreover, when the light and shadow of the Tao seed fell into the scattered nascent soul's body, another purple light brought along the light and shadow of the other Tao seed to contend with the light and shadow of the Tao seed. Not good. Seeing this, Xiaohua was shocked. Could it be that these two Tao seeds are not of the same origin? They can't be fused together. However, just as this thought appeared in Xiaohua's mind, Xiaohua was even more stunned, and an extremely bad idea appeared in his mind. Previously, this Xiao said that other people's hearts are not content, like a snake trying to swallow an elephant, but this Xiao is really not content, right? For ordinary cultivators, no, ordinary immortals to obtain a Tao seed is already an unparalleled immortal fate. Previously, when this Xiao obtained a Tao seed, my scattered nascent soul almost collapsed and could not survive. If there is another Tao seed, how can this Xiao's scattered nascent soul bear it? Needless to say, these two Tao seeds don't seem to be able to fuse together. If they are placed in the same scattered nascent soul, won't my scattered nascent soul immediately collapse? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Now, if I obtain the Tao seed of the Tao ancestor, the last 3 realms of the primordial spirit cultivation method will definitely be completed. It's just, how should this Xiao accept this Tao ancestor's Tao seed? My starry sky scattered nascent soul is a nascent soul. It is naturally unable to accept the Tao seed of a Tao ancestor. However, apart from the nascent soul, my Tao sect avatar also has a primordial spirit avatar. The Thunderbolt Immortal is a primordial spirit. Although he started cultivating the nascent soul cultivation method, he couldn't condense a nascent soul and had been cultivating according to the scattered soul cultivation method. After he went to the upper world and obtained the primordial spirit cultivation method, he has been cultivating according to the primordial spirit cultivation method. It can be said that he is truly a cultivator who cultivates the primordial spirit. If he can't obtain the Tao seed of the Tao ancestor, who can? Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly tried to wake the Thunderbolt Immortal up. To his surprise, just as his mind touched the Thunderbolt Immortal, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly swelled up. At the same time, his whole body began to tremble. Something strange happened. The Tao seed that was supposed to fall toward the dispersing nascent soul suddenly shone brightly and began to vibrate. As it buzzed, a strange fragrance seeped out of the Tao seed. The entire Tao seed began to expand as it vibrated. Halos burst out of the Tao seed like they were breaking out of a cocoon. They also seemed to be blooming as they flashed out of the Tao seed. The halos that rushed out of the Tao seed did not dissipate. Instead, they condensed into rings, clouds, and granules that scattered around the Tao seed. Everything was exactly the same as the Tao seed of the previous Tao sovereign. Seeing this, Xiaohua was relieved and quietly watched with his mind. As the fragrance came out, Xiaohua's scattered soul gradually fell under the Thunderbolt Immortal's body. The Thunderbolt Immortal's body grew bigger and bigger. Strange runes appeared around his body. After each rune appeared, they condensed into a vortex and the fragrance fell into these vortexes. Seeing the Tao seed slowly touching the top of the Thunderbolt Immortal's head, Tao Ancestor finally spat out a word, "Good." His voice was different from before. It was filled with joy and relief. Just like before, Tao Ancestor's body shattered rapidly. In just a flash, it turned into billions of dust and rushed into the Tao seed. At the same time, the Tao seed fell into the top of the Thunderbolt Immortal's head. Boom! The Thunderbolt Immortal's body shattered instantly, turning into billions of fragments of principles. The Tao seed slowly fell among these fragments. When the Tao seed stopped, the splendor flickered, and all the fragments began to recombine and condense again. In just a moment, the Thunderbolt Immortal's perfect body was revealed. Boom! A heavy pressure that was both familiar and strange rushed into Xiaohua's mind from the Thunderbolt Immortal's perception. Thousands of complicated understandings also savagely trampled on Xiaohua's Tao heart like a tsunami. At the same time, whether it was Taoist Wu, Reverend Yun, Celestial, Feng Wu, Huang Tong, or all the other clones, they had all woken up. They each displayed their bodies of the principles of power and congratulated Xiaohua. Xiaohua was about to speak when he saw that the thunderbolts did not disappear from the spot where Tao Ancestor had disappeared. Instead, layers of tribulation clouds and waves of heaven and earth majesty were rapidly condensing. Xiaohua was shocked and cried out, "Fellow Taoists, quickly use the immortal talismans." Fortunately, Tao Ancestor had disappeared, and the confinement of heaven and earth was gradually disappearing. Xiaohua was in the center of the confinement, and with his strength of 10th tier Yuan Qi, he was able to resist the confinement. When his clones forcefully stuck the immortal talismans given by Su Ji, the tribulation clouds in the sky stopped expanding. However, the tribulation clouds did not dissipate immediately. Instead, they disappeared very slowly. Obviously, the immortal talismans could no longer completely conceal Xiaohua's strength. Xiaohua did not have the time to think about the heaven tribulation. He hastily sat down cross-legged and focused his mind on Lightning Reverend, trying his best to help him absorb the enlightenment of the Tao seed and maintain the expansion of his Tao heart. Similarly, an unknown amount of time passed. It seemed to be 1,000 years, but it also seemed to be 10,000 years. When Xiaohua still hadn't opened his eyes, Bai Juanfeng's voice rang in his ears again. "Many thanks for Senior's understanding. Senior, please wait for half a day. Gao Zhuang will drive the flying shuttle to Worry-Free Manor." Xiaohua opened his eyes and looked at the flying shuttle, then at the sky and the snow-covered mountain peak below him. In front of him, Bai Fei's face was filled with disdain, and he was looking at Bai Junfeng with interest. Gao Zhuang was standing behind the shuttle, urging his magic power to drive the shuttle. Everything was the same as before. No one knew that in the blink of an eye, something had happened to Xiaohua in this time and space, something that they had never dreamed of and would never happen in their lifetime. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed and lamented in his heart. However, he said, "I have been tired for the past few months. If I can find a quiet room to rest when I reach Worry-Free Manor, that would be the best." That's right, that's right. I have the same intention. Bai Fei agreed. When Bai Junfeng heard this, he was even more delighted. He nodded and said, "Seniors, your request is too simple. There's no need to ask Lord Alliance Master for an alliance token. This junior can agree to your request right now. Hehe, don't be in such a hurry to say it's so early." Bai Fei said meaningfully, "Lord Alliance Master is anxious for us to go to the Lost Lands, right? This old man has been cultivating in seclusion for several years. Lord Alliance Master, can you wait that long?" Bai Junfeng was a little embarrassed, but he still forced a smile and said, "Lord Alliance Master, even if you're in a hurry, you should wait until Senior is ready, right? It's too early to talk about this now. Let's talk about it when we reach Worry-Free Manor." Bai Fei stood up from the flying shuttle with his hands behind his back. He looked at the mountain peak in the distance, and an aura of disdain for the world was born. Yi Yun, who was cultivating in seclusion, opened her eyes and looked at Bai Fei with tenderness in her eyes. It was as if she was infatuated. Half a day later, the flying shuttle flew to the mountain peak as scheduled. However, not only was the mountain peak fiery red, but it was also covered with strange red plants that were as red as flames. These strange plants had a faint fragrance. In the wind, not only did the fragrance spread in all directions, but the strange plants also swayed with the wind. The entire mountain peak looked as if it was on fire. In the light of the fire, a manor with green bricks, green tiles, and white walls covered the mountain peak. From afar, it looked like a paradise. Wonderful. Bai Fei stood on the flying shuttle and looked at the picturesque scenery. The faint fragrance entered his nose and he couldn't help but clap his hands and say, "Worry-free manor, it lives up to its name." Even if you're full of worries, when you see this beautiful scenery, I'm afraid you'll have to throw away your worries. Yes, if there's a beauty by your side, then it'll be even more perfect. Xiaohua nodded and said. However, what he got was Bai Huan rolling her eyes and Yi Yun's shyness. Since Worry-Free Manor was the territory of the Defeat Valley Immortal Alliance, there were naturally guards of the manor on patrol. Before the flying shuttle could get close, there were already more than 10 Golden Core disciples wearing battle armor and standing on pythons covered in huge scales surrounding the flying shuttle. After seeing Bai Juanfeng's token and the Alliance order, he ordered a few disciples to escort them into the Worry-Free Mountain Villa. The manor had already received a message, and a disciple in charge came out to welcome them. This disciple was at the mid-stage nascent soul stage. Although they didn't know what his status was in the manor, Bai Fei and Xiaohua definitely couldn't find any fault with his etiquette. After entering the manor, the disciple in charge politely invited Bai Fei and Xiaohua to the reception table and set up a banquet. Bai Junfeng, Yu Biqiong, Yi Yun, and Gao Zhuang naturally accompanied them. During the banquet, they didn't talk about the lost land, nor did they talk about the teleportation tunnel. The banquet was a happy one, but when the banquet was about to end, the disciple in charge stood up and raised his wine cup. He said with a smile, "Come, I would like to propose a toast to fellow Daoist Bai and Daoist Xiao. After chatting with the two of you, I have gained some confidence in this trip. I believe that with the two of you'll definitely be able to reach the lost land through the teleportation tunnel. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 49-54. Steward Su, you think too highly of me. Bai Fei also stood up and raised his cup with a smile. If I had such means, how could I be forced to go to the lost land? I just want to go there and have a look because I have some life-saving means. Xiaohua was different from what everyone thought. He also stood up and raised his cup, asking, "Steward Su, I want to ask again, when will we leave? When will the other friends come?" Ha! The steward disciple with the surname Su still had a smile on his face and replied, "You're quite anxious. However, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. Looking at the weather now, I'm afraid you won't be able to go there in a short time." "Oh? Why?" Xiaohua frowned and asked in confusion, "Didn't Bai Junfeng get the Alliance Master's order? Isn't our Alliance Master anxious to go there?" The steward disciple looked at Bai Junfeng and replied, "Junfeng is right. Our Alliance Master was very anxious that day because there was a reason." Speaking up to hear, the managing disciple stopped and looked around. In the end, his gaze landed on Xiaohua and said, "Daoist Xiao, why don't we drink this cup first? Let's sit down and I'll explain it to everyone in detail." Xiaohua smiled and said, I was anxious. Come, I toast to Steward Su. Please." The steward disciple raised his cup and looked at Xiaohua. Finally, his eyes fell on Bai Fei, nodded slightly and raised his cup. "Please." Bai Fei was very satisfied with the steward disciple's respect for him. After a gesture, he also drank his cup. After the spiritual wine was finished, the steward disciple asked the servant disciple to take away the spiritual wine and change it for some spiritual fruits. Then, he said, the climate of the Wuming Mountain is different from that of the Heavenly Alliance. It's hot and there's not much rain all year round. However, it's a little different this year. According to the disciple who stayed near the Wuming Mountain, the mountain is covered in dark clouds and the weather is strange. It may be related to the change of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. According to what the Alliance Master knows, the teleportation tunnel is not a complete teleportation tunnel. Instead, it is made up of several or even dozens of damaged segments. Therefore, the teleportation tunnel is greatly affected by the weather. Under the continuous rain, the danger of teleportation is even greater. What was special was that when everyone looked out of the window, when they arrived, there was still some cold wind, and the weather was still good. But now, in less than an hour, the wind was already blowing, and snow was falling quietly. If nothing unexpected happened, when night fell, the snow would definitely seal the mountain. The snow this winter came too early. Wuming Mountain Range might not have 4 seasons, but the mutation has already happened. I'm afraid that it's going to be winter soon. Under such circumstances, I can't recklessly teleport. At this point, the disciple in charge paused again. He picked up a spiritual fruit and put it into his mouth. After a while, he continued, therefore, for the sake of everyone's safety, the Alliance leader temporarily decided to suspend the plan before the new year. When spring comes next year, the disciples stationed in the Wuming Mountains will observe the weather first. When the weather is suitable and the space of the transmission tunnel is stable, we will be allowed to depart. Damn it, is this true or not? Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Looking at the serious look of the disciple in charge, he thought to himself, for a lie, you actually made up so many lies. Do you want us to go to the Lost Land? Is there a need to do this? However, on second thought, Xiaohua laughed secretly and said, although I'm anxious to return to the Dawn Rain continent through the Wuming Mountains, I don't know much about the transmission tunnel. Since you've made so many preparations, I just need to follow. It's only a few months. Although many cultivators will die in the 3 continents in a few months, I have the inside of the space to collect these souls. When I return, I will give them some opportunities as compensation. So, I'm not in a hurry. Thinking about it, Xiaohua nodded and said, if it's for our safety, I can understand. Thank you, Alliance leader, for your consideration. What about the other cultivators? Bai Fei asked again. The disciple in charge smiled and nodded at Xiaohua, then looked at Bai Fei and answered, actually, as soon as I received Alliance leader's order, I've already passed this matter to the disciples everywhere. However, Bai Junfeng and the others are more active and are already on the way back, so I didn't have any special instructions. When the other disciples get the news, they may slow down the speed of their return. However, they don't have much time. Fellow Taoists will be tested on the day of the beginning of winter. Alliance leader hopes to select suitable fellow Taoists before spring so that they can safely pass through the transmission tunnel. What about the cultivators who don't pass the test? Bai Fei asked. Hee, fellow Taoist Bai, please don't worry about this. The disciple in charge smiled and said, fellow Taoists, you've traveled tens of millions of miles. How can we let you return empty-handed? No matter the result of the selection, every fellow Taoist will get the medicinal pills and magic weapons personally refined by Alliance leader. Moreover, the cultivation methods and secret techniques of my Defeat You Immortal Alliance will be taken out for fellow Taoists to choose. That's great. Bai Fei clapped his hands and said, this way, I'm relieved. Do the 2 of you have any other questions? The disciple in charge looked at Xiaohua and asked. Xiaohua shook his head and looked at Bai Fei. Bai Fei smiled and said, we don't have any more questions. That's good. I have already prepared 2 quiet rooms for the disciples. If the 2 of you don't have any other matters, please go back and rest first. The disciple in charge smiled and said, of course, if the 2 of you have any requests, or if there are any more questions, you can find the disciple on duty nearby and let them send a message to I will come over immediately. In addition, the two of you can walk around freely in the worry-free manner. However, if you want to leave the worry-free manor, please tell me otherwise, there are some forbidden spells outside the manor. Although they aren't powerful, if you touch them, it's more troublesome. Hearing this, Bai Fei stood up and said, Manager Su, please don't worry. We are cultivators and will not cause trouble. When we reach the quiet room, we will only cultivate and will not cause any trouble for the manor. Don't you think so, Daoist Master Xiao? Xiaohua stood up and said, what Daoist Bai said is also I think. Manager Su, please don't worry. Thank you so much. If the two of you have any daily requests, feel free to mention it to the disciple on duty. I can't accompany you all the time. The disciple in charge stood up and laughed as he sent the guests off. Under the guidance of the disciple of the worry-free manor, Xiaohua and the others arrived in front of a few pavilions. Yi Yin naturally sent Bai Fei off and stopped at the side of one of the pavilions. Under the guidance of Bai Junfeng and the other two disciples of the worry-free manor, Xiaohua stopped in front of another pavilion not far from Bai Fei. Bai Junfeng took out a token and respectfully handed it to Xiaohua and said, Senior, this is the quiet room that the worry-free manor specially prepared for you. As long as you activate the restriction, without your permission, no one can enter. Okay. Xiaohua took the token and nodded, thank you for your trouble. You all should rest early. You have worked harder than us all along the way. It's not hard at all. Bai Junfeng's face was a little red as if he had drunk too much spiritual wine. He smiled and said, it's my honor to be able to invite Senior and Senior Bai to the worry-free manor. After a few polite words, Xiaohua entered the pavilion. After activating the restriction, he looked at it for a moment and said coldly, I'm afraid this restriction can't even stop the prying of a unity stage cultivator, right? Fellow Daoist, you're thinking too much. Daoist Master Thunderbolt said with a smile in his lower dantian, he said it well, without your permission, no one can enter, but he didn't say, without your permission, no one can pry, right? He doesn't care if he pries or not. Xiaohua casually threw the token on the jade table and sat down cross-legged. He said in his heart, Daoist Thunderbolt, the cultivation technique of the primordial spirit is still incomplete in the void stage, void refinement stage, and Dao integration stage. Now that we have received benefits from the Dao ancestor, it's best to modify and perfect the cultivation technique of these three stages. When he heard Xiaohua talking about modifying the cultivation technique, Daoist Master Thunderbolt didn't dare to be negligent and replied, that's right, Daoist Master Thunderbolt is right. The Dao ancestor has great expectations for us. We can't let him down. I will pack up and go to the space to discuss the cultivation technique with Daoist Master Thunderbolt. Just as Xiaohua's mind was about to enter the space, his heart suddenly moved and he asked, Daoist Thunderbolt, after obtaining this Dao seed, do you feel anything? Of course. Daoist Master Thunderbolt was slightly excited and shouted in a low voice, when we cultivated previously, it seemed that we only saw the cultivation technique and didn't know the origin of the cultivation technique, let alone the origin of the technique. Especially when I entrusted my primordial spirit to the laws of heaven and earth like Daoist Master Thunderbolt, I felt that I had become one with the laws of heaven and earth. However, this one was extremely vague. It was like the heavens were one, the earth was one, you were one, and I was also one. I couldn't see through the essence of this one. When this Dao seed entered my body, I suddenly seemed to grow taller and could see more things. I felt that your one was similar to my one, but also different. Perhaps, I could know the origin of the cultivation method and the origin of the spell if I could differentiate my one from yours. That's right. That way, I could know the origin of the cultivation method and the origin of the spell. When Xiaohua heard this, apart from being happy, there was also a trace of regret. He asked tentatively, is it possible that there's nothing else? What else? Daoist Master Thunderbolt scratched his head and said, Daoist Master Thunderbolt, can you explain it clearly? Xiaohua was naturally talking about human nature, but since Daoist Master Thunderbolt didn't understand, presumably this Dao seed was only a Dao seed and not the seed of human nature. Xiaohua could only smile and say, when it's time to know, Daoist Master Thunderbolt will naturally know. After saying this, Xiaohua opened his mouth again and said, Daoist Master Wu, where is Daoist Huang Tong? We're here. Do you have any orders? Following Xiaohua's voice, Daoist Master Wu and Huang Tong flew out of Xiaohua's body and stood in the quiet room with a smile. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and thank you for all forms of support. Congratulations to the leader of Flying Clouds and Sunsets, and I wish Standing Still Flag a happy birthday. Chapter 4955. Xiaohua raised his eyes to look at the two doppelgangers. Their auras were similar to before they were formed by the laws, but their auras were different. Xiaohua's gaze swept across the two doppelgangers. He felt that whether it was their physical bodies, laws, witchcraft, or demons, there was an indescribable feeling. Congratulations, fellow Taoists. Xiaohua could not help but sigh as he cupped his hands. Congratulations, congratulations. How could Daoist Witch and Huang Tong not know what Xiaohua was thinking? The two doppelgangers also returned the greeting. This is fellow Daoists' opportunity, and also our opportunity. The Dao Ancestor and Dao Master have planted the Dao seeds. Although fellow Daoist and Thunderbolt Immortal benefited, we also benefited. Good. Xiaohua clapped his hands. Since the heavenly Dao favors us, we must also contribute to the heavens and earth. Today, I'll have to trouble you two to go to the Wuming Mountain Range. Huh, no problem, no problem. Huang Tong was the most straightforward. Without needing Xiaohua to say more, she immediately spread her wings, tore the void apart, and flew in. Daoist Witch did not say much. Seeing Huang Tong leave, he nodded at Xiaohua and followed her into the space. Alright, since you two have left, let's quickly deduce the cultivation method. Seeing the ripples in the space, Xiaohua said lightly and brought Thunderbolt Immortal into the space. In just a few days, black and white markings suddenly appeared at the spot where Huang Tong had torn apart space. Immediately, a powerful spatial force tore apart the nearby space like a giant hand. An incomparably brazen yuan was stretched out from the space. What is this? Before the primordial thought could be retracted, Huang Tong's voice came from the void. Could it be that someone is spying on us? Huang Tong's return had already attracted Xiaohua's attention. He opened his eyes and looked at a certain spot in the space. He smiled faintly. If I'm not wrong, it should be by Fei testing and suspecting I. But don't worry about him, he's just a child. Hee, this Bai Fei has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. Daoist Witch's figure came out of the space crack. He also looked at the same spot and smiled. He actually dared to use this in front of me. Fellow Daoist, why don't you give Bai Fei an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Xiaohua stood up and watched Huang Tong and Taoist priest Wu return. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We are great sages of the human race. Why are we arguing with a nascent soul kid? Quickly tell me about the situation in the Wuming Mountain Range. Huang Tong glanced at Daoist Witch and said, I'll tell you about the Khanate restriction first. Daoist Witch, tell me about the situation of the soul beasts. All right. Daoist Witch nodded in agreement. Fellow Daoist. Huang Tong looked at Xiaohua with a serious face and said, this matter is beyond our expectations, but also within our expectations. Fellow Daoist, don't keep me in suspense. Xiaohua's heart was somewhat anxious, but he still restrained his temper and scolded, quickly say it. The reason why I said it was beyond our expectations is because the power of the innate restriction is far beyond our imagination. Huang Tong didn't dare to be negligent and explained, before my spatial escape technique reached the Wuming Mountain Range, I already felt as if the laws of heaven and earth had been cut off. The spatial tunnel had also been blocked, and I couldn't take half a step forward. Furthermore, I also tried in other directions, but all the spatial laws that were heading towards the Dawn Rain continent were forcefully imprisoned in the Wuming Mountain Range. In other words, the Wuming Mountain Range is a checkpoint from the Lin continent to the Dawn Rain continent. A bottleneck. A path that must be passed through. We can't go around it. And now, this bottleneck has been blocked. My spatial techniques can't detect the spatial laws of the Dawn Rain continent. Xiao Hua's expression didn't change. He nodded and said, "Fellow Daoist, spatial techniques are unparalleled in the world. If even you can't use your spatial escape technique to pass through, then the cultivators of the Lin continent most likely can't pass through." That should be the case. Huang Tong replied, "Of course, this situation isn't out of my expectations. If it wasn't for the fact that the Wuming Mountain Range is so difficult to pass through, the Devil Clan would have invaded the Dawn Rain continent on a large scale, and the cultivators of the Lin continent would have been able to freely travel between the two continents. Oh, also, this Wuming Mountain Range doesn't have any traces of the boundary laws. It's different from the natural restrictions between the three continents and the Dawn Rain continent. This is also within my expectations. The natural restrictions of the Wuming Mountain Range are probably natural restrictions, different from the Buddhist, Taoist, and demon immortal arrays." Xiao Hua replied, "Because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth between the three continents and the Dawn Rain continent doesn't circulate, while the spiritual energy of heaven and earth between the Lin continent and the Dawn Rain continent is the same. As for how the spatial laws of the Wuming Mountain Range were imprisoned, I didn't look too much." Huang Tong said again, "After all, fellow Daoist was preparing to pass through some teleportation tunnel, so I didn't take off my pants to fart. It was unnecessary." "Oh right, fellow Daoist didn't see any teleportation tunnel?" Xiao Hua asked. Huang Tong shook his head and said, "I came and went in a hurry, so I didn't look too carefully." However, the Taoism was suppressed by the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect, and in the Wuming Mountain Range, neither the Heaven Alliance nor the Tao Alliance forcibly suppressed it. Instead, they used time and spells to destroy the soul cultivators' inheritance bit by bit. How could Huang Tong not know what Xiao Hua and Taoist Witch were thinking? The cunning phoenix Dharma body smirked and said faintly, "Damn it, the Xiaoyu continent's waters are too deep. We haven't even dealt with the three continents, and now the Wuming Mountain Range pops up. If we want to save the world, we must destroy the immortal formation. According to Fairy Xingyue's metaphor, we should have offended the immortals in the immortal realm. That's someone who even she doesn't dare to say. Now, we have to face the person who divided the Wuming Mountain Range into two and wants to wipe out the soul cultivators from the world. Are we tired of living?" Taoist Witch was in a good mood, but now he felt like he had fallen into an ice cave. He was born to be a witch, so he naturally cared about the fate of the soul cultivators, just like Xiao Hua. How could he not be nervous when he suddenly realized that the soul cultivators might be annihilated? Taoist Witch. Xiao Hua understood Taoist Witch's heart and Huang Tong's warning. He sighed and said, "We have a lot of things to do, but our strength is limited and we don't have much time. We can only pick the most important things to do. The soul cultivators in the Wuming Mountain Range have been lost, but the millions of soul cultivators in the Meng Mountain Range are still there, aren't they? Any inheritance in this world exists to the heavens and will never be annihilated by humans. You have to have faith in the will of heaven. I have faith in the will of heaven, but I have no faith in people's hearts." Taoist Witch shook his head slightly and looked at Xiao Hua and Huang Tong. He said bitterly, "You two can discuss it first. Taoist Huang Tong knows what I saw. I will take my leave first." After that, Taoist Witch's figure flashed and he disappeared into space. Xiao Hua and Huang Tong looked at each other. After a while, Huang Tong said, "This guess is a bit presumptuous and too sudden. I'm afraid Taoist Witch can't accept it for a while. Let him think about it calmly first." Then, Huang Tong briefly explained the situation in the depths of the Wuming Mountain Range and disappeared into space. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a reward, and congratulations to the leader of Flying Clouds and Sunsets, and happy birthday to Standing Still Flag. Chapter 4956. Sigh, it's really one trouble after another. Xiaohua pinched his chin, and a worried expression appeared on his face. He sighed and said, just now, we managed to suppress the Tao's sex immortal formation, and now, the soul cultivator, this ladle, has appeared. And the Taoist immortal array is still unsolved. I have 10 doppelgangers, but this seems to be related to ancient secrets. I'm afraid I can't do anything about it. I'll do what I can do first. After that, Xiaohua sat down cross-legged and continued to deduce the last 3 realms of primordial spirit cultivation with the Thunderbolt Immortal. Bai Fei entered the pavilion accompanied by Yi Yun. After chatting for a while, Yi Yun got up and said goodbye. Before she walked to the door, Yi Yun suddenly turned around and asked, Senior Bai, the teleportation tunnel to the Lost Land is actually very dangerous. The cultivation environment of the Heavenly Alliance is so good, you don't have to go to the Lost Land. Bai Fei looked at Yi Yun's beautiful face and said in a low voice, Miss Yi, you must remember the few things you asked me when we met in the Wuming Mountains, right? Yi Yun nodded slightly and replied, of course, if it weren't for those few questions, I wouldn't have said, I understand, when we were in Tong Lake City. You called the Wuming Mountains Million Mountains, and I know, you're not a cultivator of the Heavenly Alliance. You must be from the Lost Land, right? Yes, thank you, Miss Yi. I didn't tell you what I meant at that time. Bai Fei smiled and said, since Miss Yi knows this Bai's background, I believe you should also know, this Bai must return. Senior Bai. Yi Yun hesitated for a while and said, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth has changed. I'm afraid even the Lost Land will be affected. Instead of going back to the Lost Land, why don't you stay in the Heavenly Alliance? It's more convenient for you to get cultivation methods and elixirs than the Lost Land, right? Of course, this is just my opinion. As for where you go, you have to consider it yourself. I'll take my leave now. Yi Yun bowed and took her leave. Bai Fei watched as Yi Yun left. He took out his token and activated the array. He released his divine sense and looked around for a long time before sitting down cross-legged. He rubbed his chin as if he was thinking. At this moment, a very clear voice suddenly sounded, what's wrong? Master can't bear to part with this infatuated little girl? No. Bai Fei did not seem to be surprised at all. Instead, he said in a low voice, I keep feeling that there's another meaning behind Yi Yun's words. Oh? What do you mean? The voice said sourly. This concubine only heard concern and did not hear anything else. Furthermore, I feel that Master's methods are even more brilliant. With just a few words, you managed to make a woman with absolute evil profound fall in love with you. Little you, don't you feel that this journey is too strange? Bai Fei ignored him and continued to ask, when Bai Junfeng saw me and that Taoist Master Xiao, it was as if he saw a fish that had taken the bait. He was afraid that we would go back on our words and escape, so he kept bringing us to teleport. Previously, I was just joking with Taoist Master Xiao, but I didn't expect that Bai Junfeng would actually use the Order of the Alliance Master to defeat the Immortal Alliance. His purpose was to not let us stay in Border City for long. This concubine does not know. The voice dragged out the rhythm and said, didn't this concubine say that she wanted to go and take a look that day? Master was not willing to let this concubine take the risk, so this concubine could only not go. By the way, little you. Bai Fei's thoughts jumped and he suddenly asked, is it time to water the spiritual herbs in this world with spiritual liquid? Yes, Master. The voice hurriedly replied, recently, Master has been teleporting and has not given this concubine any spiritual liquid. Many spiritual herbs have begun to wither. However, Master can rest assured that this concubine will help Master look after those spiritual herbs that Master values. There will be no problem. Good. Bai Fei nodded and said. He vigilantly released his divine sense to look around. Only then did he raise his hand and reach into his clothes. He pulled out a small bottle the size of a thumb that was tied together with a colorful string. This small bottle was green and there were some exquisite, dark green leaf-like patterns on the bottle. Wasn't this the strange small bottle that Xiaohua saw when he participated in the martial arts convention at Luofeng Mountain? At this time, the small bottle was the same as before. There was a cork tightly covering the small bottle. After Bai Fei took out the small bottle, he took out a jade bottle from his storage ring. After opening the cork of the small bottle, he carefully poured the small bottle on top of the jade bottle. Pa. 2 drops of green spiritual liquid dripped from the small bottle. When the spiritual liquid fell into the jade bottle, Bai Fei formed a seal with his hand and waved his left hand. Swish swish. A stream of water appeared in mid-air and trickled into the jade bottle. Then, Bai Fei closed the small bottle and carefully hid the small bottle in front of his chest again. Then, Bai Fei shook the jade bottle in his hand and listened for a moment. A sneer appeared on his face and he secretly said, "Hee, what does the change of the spiritual aura of heaven and earth have to do with me? With the spiritual liquid, not to mention returning to Xiaoyu continent, I can still cultivate even if the heaven and earth are turned upside down. Instead of cultivating in fear under the attention of so many capable people in the Heavenly Alliance, it's better to return to the Lost Land. No one can see through my secret." After a while, Bai Fei raised his hand and pointed at a quaint bracelet on his left wrist and said, "Okay, you can come out." As Bai Fei's voice fell, a layer of yellow light appeared on the bracelet. A small fox with snow-white fluffy hair flew out from the light. This small fox turned a few times in mid-air and the brilliance bloomed like a kaleidoscope. A charming woman appeared in mid-air. "Greetings, Master." The woman landed on the ground and immediately bowed respectfully. Xiaohua waved his hand and handed the jade bottle to the woman and said, "You don't have to be so polite. This is the spiritual liquid. You can water all the spiritual herbs in this world." "Yes, Master." Xiaoya answered and took the jade bottle. She shook it with her hand and said happily, "Master, I really don't understand. Where did Master get so much spiritual liquid? With this spiritual liquid, the spiritual herbs in this world will grow several times or even dozens of times faster than those outside. With this spiritual liquid, it's really easy for Master to cultivate to the immortal realm." Bai Fei's mood was obviously very good. He smiled and said, "What's wrong? Why are you so talkative today?" "Hee." Xiaoya smiled charmingly and licked the corner of her mouth with her pink tongue. She said, "Do you still need me to say it? Master understands." Okay. Bai Fei smiled and said, "After you water the spiritual herbs, I will give you 3 drops of spiritual liquid." "Thank you, Master." Xiaoye was wild with joy. She winked at Bai Fei and moved her body, falling into the yellow light in Bai Fei's left bracelet again. Bai Fei waited for Xiaoye to fall into the bracelet before he raised his right hand and touched the small bottle hidden in front of his chest. His eyes narrowed slightly. After a while, Xiaoye flew out again and respectfully returned the jade bottle to Bai Fei. Just as she was about to return, Bai Fei suddenly called out, "Xiaoye, don't be anxious. I have something for you to do." Oh. Master, please tell me. What do you need me to do?" Xiaoye was startled and hurriedly asked. "What do you need me to do?" "I will tell you in detail in a while." Bai Fei seemed to have thought of something and said, "I remember when you met Daoist Xiao earlier, you used your Fox clan's secret technique to investigate him. You said this Daoist Xiao had an aura that made you feel very close and very fearful, right?" "Yes." Xiaoye's eyes lit up when she heard Daoist Xiao. She said, "Master, this Daoist Xiao is definitely a little strange. I feel that, if he's not from the demon clan who used a secret technique to hide himself, then he must have cultivated some kind of magical power of my Fox clan or the demon clan. Otherwise, I definitely wouldn't have such a feeling. However, facing this kind of secret technique, my secret technique isn't effective, so it's hard to make an accurate judgment. If he's from the demon clan, how's his strength?" Chapter 49-57. Bai Fei was expressionless and didn't answer. Xiaoye continued, you've always regarded Xiaohua as a goal that you have to surpass in your cultivation, even though you know in your heart that your current cultivation has far surpassed him. But, before you see him, you always feel that he's firmly on top of you. You will never be able to raise your head in front of him. Actually, you did everything possible to return to the Dawn Rain continent. Avoiding the experts of the Heaven Alliance is one thing, avoiding the changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is another, but the real purpose, I'm afraid only you know. You have to use your own strength to prove that you are the master of the Heaven Tao. You have already stepped on Xiaohua. At this moment, Bai Fei spoke, that's right. On the Yilin continent, I can also avoid the experts of the Heaven Alliance. However, on the Dawn Rain continent, the changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth are still unavoidable. My greatest wish and most important purpose for returning to the Dawn Rain continent is to eradicate this inner demon in my heart. I want to see Xiaohua's cultivation. I want to see his progress in these hundreds of years. That Xiaohua who firmly suppressed me back then is no longer an obstacle in my cultivation. Master, Xiaoya advised tactfully, actually, you don't have to care too much about these. How many cultivators in this world have such opportunities like yours? You have this heaven-defying spiritual liquid and also obtained an ancient immortal artifact of heaven and earth. Just based on these, that Xiaohua is far inferior to you. Moreover, besides these, you have the tenacity, courage that other cultivators don't have. These are more important than elixirs and cultivation techniques. Now that you have already stepped on Xiaohua, you will step on the entire Heaven Alliance and the entire Tao Alliance in the future. Bai Fei looked at Xiaoya and smiled, Xiaoya, thank you for your encouragement. Even more so, thank you for your company in these hundreds of years. Master, you're too polite. Xiaoya pursed her lips and smiled. Ever since I was saved by Master in Wanshi's Fulin mountain range, I knew that I was destined to be with Master in this life. Only when Master goes far can I go far. Ah, that's right. Wanshi's Fulin Ridge. Bai Fei sighed, hundreds of years have passed in the blink of an eye. Thinking back to yesterday, Shi Wuming, Mo Shan, Roa Taohong, and I were trapped in the Fulin Ridge's ancient prohibition spell. If it weren't for your help, I would have been killed by that soul warrior just like the three of them. Of course not. Xiao Yu hurriedly said. Master, you are truly blessed with great fortune, and clever in your schemes. Not only did you manage to kill that spirit warrior, you even managed to obtain the secret map. That was how you were able to use the ancient teleportation portal to reach the Yilin continent. Otherwise, how could Master cultivate to the nascent soul realm in Dawn Rain continent alone? Hearing this, Bai Fei's expression tensed up, and he asked, but, do you know? That day, other than the four of us, Xiaohua also went to Fulin mountain range. But I don't know why, but when he heard the words Fulin mountain range, he immediately refused and left. He didn't even give a reason. Also, I want to tell you that although Xiaohua was only a foundation establishment cultivator at that time, his strength had already reached the gold core realm. He even had a dharma name that only nascent soul cultivators had, that was Immortal Xiao. Ah! Xiao Yu's body shook, and she exclaimed, Master, you mean this Immortal Xiao is the Xiaohua you mentioned? No. Bai Fei shook his head and said, I'm just suspecting. And the more I think about it, the more I feel that it's impossible. Of course. Xiao Yu smiled and said, that's absolutely impossible. It's just your inner demon causing trouble. Yes. Bai Fei sighed and said, when we left Dawn Rain continent, Xiaohua had just been expelled by the Imperial Thunder sect. It seemed that he wanted to be a rogue cultivator in Meng Kingdom. It's impossible for him to obtain the secret map of the millions of Meng mountains like us. And the most impossible thing is that the teleportation tunnel had already collapsed because of the mutation. It's impossible for it to be used again. It's also impossible for cultivators to go from Dawn Rain continent to Heaven Alliance. Of course, we can't rule out other secret passages. Xiao Yu smiled and said, but, Master, to be able to own a piece of heaven and earth, to be able to possess spirit liquid, in this world, only Master alone. Even if Xiao Hua is called Immortal Xiao, he's definitely not this immortal Xiao in front of us. It's also impossible for him to cultivate to the middle stage of nascent soul realm. Actually. Bai Fei smiled bitterly and said, when I met Immortal Xiao, I already told him my name. If he's Xiao Hua, he wouldn't tell me that he's called Immortal Xiao. Of course, I've already changed my appearance when I was pregnant. Even if he's Xiao Hua, he still wouldn't be able to recognize me. Master can change his appearance when he's pregnant, then Xiao Hua can naturally change his appearance when he's pregnant. Xiao Yu asked. It's said that Xiao Hua has taken the rejuvenation pill. His appearance hasn't changed for 1,000 years. He's also not ugly, so he shouldn't change much when he's pregnant. Bai Fei seemed to know a lot about Xiao Hua and replied. Who knows? Xiao Yu pursed her lips and said with a smile, you humans value appearances the most. Speaking up to here, Xiao Yu suddenly thought of something and reminded, that's right, Master, the mutation of this heaven and earth's spiritual energy is very beneficial to my demon race. Those humans with true spirit bloodline also cultivate extremely quickly. You shouldn't be careless. If Xiao Hua has any demon bloodline, he might be able to cultivate into nascent soul. Hee, so what if he cultivates into nascent soul? Bai Fei said proudly, there's always someone better. I'm the heavens beyond the heavens, the people beyond the people. Master. Xiao Yu said with a smile, what's wrong with you today? Master wouldn't say these words before. Master is the most cautious. Bai Fei was shocked and hurriedly put away his arrogance. He nodded and said, you're right. I'm a little relaxed today. After you go, I'll go into seclusion for a few days to calm my mind. Oh, what does Master want me to do? Xiao Yu asked hurriedly. Bai Junfeng has been in a hurry since Tong Lake City. This seems a little strange. Besides, Yi Yun's words were also ambiguous. I think something must have happened in the Heavenly Alliance. Bai Fei told her his suspicions and finally ordered, go to the nearest big city to Worry-Free Villa and have a look. Then come back and report to me. Yes, I know. Xiao Yu nodded and said, I'll go now. When you come back, I'll give you 2 drops of spiritual liquid to help you condense your body. Bai Fei said with a smile. Xiao Yu was overjoyed and said, thank you, Master. After saying that, Xiao Yu's figure flashed. Ignoring the restriction of the pavilion, she left without saying anything. Seeing Xiao Yu leave, Bai Fei sat down cross-legged and prepared to cultivate. However, after a few minutes, Bai Fei opened his eyes again and frowned, demon race? Or a human who cultivates the secret skill of the demon race? This immortal Xiao is quite interesting. After saying that, Bai Fei took out a palm-sized bronze plate. This bronze plate was rusty and looked very broken. Looking at the bronze plate again, a ferocious ghost head was engraved on it. Bai Fei made a gesture with both hands and a dark green color appeared on his chest. Then, he opened his mouth and a mouthful of blood essence fell into the dark green color. As Bai Fei raised his hand and pointed, the blood essence mixed with the dark green color fell into the bronze plate. Aoo. A burst of ghostly laughter rang out, and the surrounding 100 feet suddenly became cold. The ghostly head on the bronze plate was laughing, and at the same time, it emerged from the bronze plate and turned into a ball of light the size of a wicker basket. Go. Bai Fei pointed at the ghostly light ball and the light ball immediately disappeared into the void. Ao. In a moment, where the light ball disappeared, a grayish-black fog surged out. Waves of ghostly wails and howls came out. After a layer of grayish-black light distorted, a ghost head flew out from the fog. The moment the ghost head appeared, it immediately shouted, Master, why did you summon the ghost servant? Bai Fei raised his hand and flicked it. A ray of light appeared and Xiao Hua's appearance appeared. Bai Fei pointed at Xiao Hua's appearance and said, this cultivator is meditating in a pavilion not far from this old man. You don't have to disturb him. Just watch from the side. If there are any strange movements, immediately report to this old man. Yes, master. The ghost servant replied and turned into a black gas and disappeared into the void. After the ghost servant left, Bai Fei shook his head in boredom and said with a bitter smile, "Damn it, am I too nervous? It's just a cultivator with the same Dharma name. Even if the two of them are the same person, so what? Xiao Hua is just a clown. In this era of change, I'm the real ruler." After he finished speaking, Bai Fei sat down cross-legged again. He took out a scarlet pill from the heaven and earth bracelet and placed it in the air. Then, Bai Fei activated his true essence. Roar. A rumbling sound came from Bai Fei's mouth. Layers of golden scales appeared on Bai Fei's arms and back. The surrounding heaven and earth spirit chi turned into a hurricane and rushed into the gaps between the scales. Bai Fei's eyes also shone with a golden light. Seeing the golden light and golden fog rush out of Bai Fei's mouth and nose like a dragon and quickly circle around his strange body, Bai Fei slapped his head again. Boom! A 10-foot-tall nascent soul wearing spirit armor flew out. This nascent soul opened its mouth and a bamboo-colored flying sword flew out. It rushed into the sky and turned into a sword net. The nascent soul formed a sword seal and controlled the flying sword to shuttle through the sword net. Bai Fei was actually doing two things at once. He was refining his body and refining his flying sword at the same time. It was no wonder that he had the arrogance of stepping on Xiao Hua. This kind of talent, this kind of hardship, it was just as Xiaoya said. It was not something an ordinary cultivator could have. Unfortunately, even if Bai Fei's imagination were to grow 9 layers of wings, it would still be impossible for his imagination to catch up to Xiao Hua's cultivation, let alone his true strength. Never in his wildest dreams could he have imagined that more than a month later, the 3 jade slips that Xiaoya brought back from the auction house, the nascent soul cultivation method, and the spiritual root selection method that made him go wild with joy, were all modified by Xiao Hua. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 4958. Bai Fei held the 3 jade slips and read them while suppressing the ecstasy in his heart. Before he could withdraw his divine thought, he could not help but ask, "Xiao Yu, you said that these extremely precious cultivation methods are only sold for 10 top-grade crystals. They are sold in the auction house of Cloud City?" "Yes, master." Xiao Yu's eyes were also filled with a strange light as she replied, "I didn't dare to believe it before. I waited in the auction house for a few days, but when I saw spirit severing stage cultivators, combination stage cultivators, and even chi refining stage cultivators buying them, I knew it was true. However, I didn't have any crystals on me, and master specially warned me not to harm any human, so I spent so much time to get these 3 jade slips." "Have you seen this cultivation method before?" Bai Fei asked while waving the jade slips in his hand. Xiao Yu smiled and said, "How can I not take a look at the cultivation method I brought for master?" "What do you think?" Bai Fei asked with interest. "Master, I don't know the cultivation method of the human race." Xiao Yu listened and replied seriously, "However, I saw the chi refining and essence refining cultivation methods inside. It seems that some of them are enlightened, and I feel that if I cultivate them, I may succeed. So I think, this cultivation method must be real. Yes, the person who created this cultivation method must be the most powerful person in the world." Bai Fei sighed and said, "The spiritual chi of heaven and earth has changed, and the human race with the true spirit bloodline has a much faster cultivation speed than ordinary cultivators. This means that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is related to the spirit beasts. Since you think this cultivation method is useful, it must be real. Xiao Yu, did you find out which senior of the Heaven Alliance created this cultivation method?" "This." Xiao Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Now we only know that it was created by a senior named Zhang Xiaohua. As for whether he was an expert of the Heaven Alliance or the Tao Alliance, no one knows. The Heaven Alliance said he was from the Heaven Alliance, and the Tao Alliance said he was from the Tao Alliance. However, the problem is that this senior Zhang Xiaohua is elusive, and no one knows where he is. No one knew where he came from. There are even some people who say that Zhang Xiaohua is not creating a cultivation method by herself, but a group of people, a group of peerless experts, creating a cultivation method together. It's just that they want Zhang Xiaohua to come out alone. When she spoke up to hear, Xiaoya suddenly recalled something and reported. Right, Master, Senior Zhang Xiaohua made an appearance recently in Tong Lake City. What? Tong Lake City? Bai Fei was shocked and almost jumped up. When? I've calculated. It should be the few days when Master arrived at Tong Lake City. Xia Yu replied. Impossible. Bai Fei waved his hand and said, if that's the case, why didn't I know about it? However, just as Bai Fei spoke up to this point, his expression suddenly changed greatly, as if he had thought of something. Xiaoya did not seem to notice Bai Fei's expression as she continued. It said that Senior Zhang Xiaohua suddenly appeared in the Heaven Alliance's Tong Lake City and ordered the city lord of Tong Lake City, the Reverend Jade Lake, to hold an auction. Apart from the cultivators who participated in the auction that day, Senior Zhang also asked Master Bihu to use the teleportation array to teleport the owners of the shops on the 7th, 8th, and 9th levels of Tong Lake City to the auction. He sold all the jade slips at the price of 10 supreme-grade crystals for each jade slip. After the auction, not only did the number of cultivators in Tong Lake City decrease by 40%, but the shops on the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors were also emptied by 30%. Many people said that the emptied shops should be the spies of the Dao Alliance in Tong Lake City. They immediately left the Heaven Alliance and returned to the Dao Alliance after taking the cultivation method. D*M it, D*M it, D*M it. Bai Fei cursed angrily and shouted, I understand now. Why didn't Bai Jun Feng let Daoist Xiao and I stay in Tong Lake City for long? He didn't dare to let us stay in Border City for long. He was afraid that if we saw the cultivation method, we wouldn't go to the Lost Land. That's right. Xiaoya added fuel to the fire. Ordinary cultivators go to the Lost Land because they want to find a way to cultivate, right? Now that there's a spiritual root selection method and a modified cultivation method, who would still take the risk to go to the Lost Land? That little girl with the evil spirit Profound Een doesn't seem to be dead set on Master. Master, you have to think of a way. Oh, it seems that the Void Cloud pill is useful. Humph. Bai Fei snorted coldly, scaring Xiaoya into shutting her mouth. The entire pavilion immediately fell silent. Do you have a portrait of Senior Zhang? Bai Fei suddenly asked. Master. Xiaoya replied. Senior Zhang is now the most powerful person in the Yilin continent. Even Long Shenxi of the Heaven Alliance can't compare to him. Which cultivator would dare to keep a portrait of Senior Zhang? However, it said that because of Senior Zhang's appearance in Tong Lake City is now filled with Heaven Alliance experts. Even, at the border between the Dao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance, there's an abyss called the Heaven Sacrifice Abyss. The Dao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance have already sent many experts to set up a blockade. The Heaven Alliance wants to prevent Senior Zhang's cultivation method from falling into the hands of the Dao Alliance. The Dao Alliance wants to get the cultivation method from the Heaven Alliance. Bai Fei rubbed his chin and muttered to himself in confusion. However, I don't understand why Senior Zhang Xiaohua would create a spiritual root selection method for no reason. Why would he modify the nascent soul and primordial spirit cultivation methods? What good would it do him? A cultivation method costs 10 top-grade crystals. 10 top-grade crystals can't even buy a magic treasure. It's a cheap price. Could it be that Senior Zhang? At this point, Bai Fei's eyes suddenly lit up. As if he had a card up his sleeve, he said, I understand now. Senior Zhang must be from another hidden immortal alliance that's similar in strength to the Dao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance. They want to use this cultivation method to cause a war between the Heaven Alliance and the Dao Alliance. Only then can they benefit from it. Xiaoya thought for a while and nodded hesitantly. Master, you're right. I think that Zhang Xiaohua might have been possessed by the devil race. Now that the Yilan continent is in turmoil, the devil race has always wanted to show themselves. If they use this cultivation method, the human race will definitely be in chaos. Wouldn't the devil race benefit from it? It could also be the sole cultivators of the Million Meng Mountains. Bai Fei guessed even more boldly. They're not willing to stay in the Million Meng Mountains. They want to covet the entire Yilan continent. At the very least, they want to form a tripartite balance with the Tao Alliance and the Heaven Alliance. Master. Hearing this, Xiaoya couldn't help but sigh. I can't help but admire Master's choice. This is not only Master's shrewdness, but also the favor of the heavens. The Yilan continent is about to fall into chaos, and Master has returned to the Xiaoyu continent. When Master's cultivation reaches the highest level, he will return to the Yilan continent to fight with them. He. Bai Fei smiled and said, Xiaoya, you're thinking too much. I'm not the kind of person who commands the winds and clouds. I only want to cultivate quietly and embark on the path of immortality. Master, you're thinking too little. Xiaoya pursed her lips and smiled. How can a person with such good fortune like Master only cultivate quietly? Let's not talk about other things. Master's world is an ancient immortal item. It's 365 mu. Although there's no spiritual energy of heaven and earth, no matter if it's humans, demons, or spiritual herbs, everything can survive in it. This is the method of an immortal. Damn it. Hearing Xiaoya's words, Bai Fei's expression changed greatly. He cursed under his breath. Have you forgotten what I warned you about? This concubine deserves to die, this concubine deserves to die. When Xiaoya heard this, her entire graceful body trembled. She hurriedly prostrated herself on the ground and said, this concubine won't dare to do it again. Bai Fei watched Xiaoya's body fall to the ground. He raised his hands slightly and a fist-sized gold-devouring bug engraved with countless golden threads appeared between his fingers. Bai Fei's expression was uncertain. He was extremely regretful that he had revealed the secret of the world to Xiaoya. However, he had no choice. He couldn't farm in the world. His puppet was also clumsy, so he could only rely on Xiaoya to take care of those spiritual herbs. After a full 5 minutes, Bai Fei waved his hand and recalled the gold-devouring bug. He looked at Xiaoya and sighed. Xiaoya, I really don't want to hurt you. But you can't force me to do it. Xiaoya seemed to be very afraid of Bai Fei's methods. She begged, yes, this concubine knows. This concubine only accidentally let it slip in front of Master. If it was anywhere else, this concubine definitely wouldn't. Get up. Bai Fei amiably helped Xiaoya up. Although Xiaoya's skin was smooth and tender in his hands, Bai Fei was not moved at all. He said, cultivation is an extremely dangerous path. This world is also a world where the strong prey on the weak. This concubine Bai was able to cultivate painstakingly to this stage only because of her cautiousness. Although on the Dawn Rain continent, there are people who despise this concubine Bai's character and disdain this concubine Bai's actions, but now, this concubine Bai has become a nascent soul master. And they, probably haven't even cultivated to the late stage of golden core. When they see this concubine Bai, all their previous disdain and contempt will turn into longing and respect. At that time, they should know that this concubine Bai's previous actions were correct and wise. Yes, master. Xiaoya was wrong. Xiaoya whispered. Xiaoya still trusts others too much. Even though Xiaoya has been suppressed in the demon array for so long, I still can't change this bad habit, so you won't be able to achieve great things. Bai Fei nodded. You can only be, this concubine Bai's assistant. It's this concubine's honor to be able to command heaven and earth with this master. Xiaoya didn't dare to be ostentatious and said with a slight smile. Bai Fei waved his hand and said, forget it. Go back and rest. Since this cultivation method has already appeared, I'm afraid that the plan of defeat you Immortal Alliance has changed. Let's not talk about whether that alliance master can return or not, even the capable person they're looking for won't come again. This concubine by still has to think of a way to get the secret of that transmission tunnel from Defeat You Immortal Alliance. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 49-59. Then, Bai Fei used his hand to point at the bracelet on his left wrist. The bracelet once again emitted an earthy yellow light screen, and Xiao Yu was sucked into it. When Xiao Yu fell into a world, Bai Fei frowned and looked at the immortal artifact on his left wrist that was similar to the heaven and earth bracelet. His eyes were filled with caution. However, after frowning and thinking for a moment, he seemed to have no good ideas. He could only whisper, "Forget it. After I obtain the cultivation method of the spirit puppet, I can't let Xiao Yu stay in this world anymore. If this secret is known by others, what would happen?" Bai Fei sat down cross-legged, picked up a jade slip, and looked at it for a moment. He unconsciously clapped his hands again and sighed, "Zhang Xiaohua is really a god. If I can become a disciple of such an expert, why should I worry about the immortal path? It's a pity that this senior and the power controlled by this senior have a big plan. If I go, I'll just be a chess piece. I'd better cultivate honestly." Thinking of this, Bai Fei reached out and took out the bronze plate. As he formed a seal, the ghost servant appeared from the void. He immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, Master." How's the situation?" Bai Fei was not so polite to the ghost servant and asked indifferently. "Reporting to Master." The ghost servant replied, "Just like a few days ago, that human is only sitting cross-legged and cultivating. It's similar to what Master said about closed-door cultivation. He didn't even move." "Good." Bai Fei took out a dark green bead and threw it to the ghost servant. There was some fog inside the bead, and several frightened and panicked wandering souls came out of the fog. The ghost servant opened his mouth and swallowed the bead. He closed his pitch-black eyes and looked like he was enjoying it. "Continue monitoring. If there are any unusual movements, immediately report to this old man." Bai Fei waved his hand, indicating for the ghost servant to leave. "This Taoist Master Xiao is working hard." Bai Fei did not doubt him, and the corner of his mouth revealed a trace of a smile. If he was an ordinary rogue cultivator, I might have helped him a little. However, even if he is not a demon, he is a human cultivator with a demon cultivation method. I will also consider it. But if he's a demon, his loyalty will be discounted. If you don't let me use a forbidden technique on him, how can I be at ease letting him follow me? Yes, I should consider this. After all, I'm going to return to the Dawn Rain continent now. Little you, ghost servant, and the others can't be exposed in front of others. With Taoist Xiao helping me take care of everything, he'll be a useful helper. When there's a chance, I'll test it out first. If he's really reliable, I don't mind giving him some opportunities." Putting aside Bai Fei's benevolent heart, wanting to recruit Xiao Hua as his helper, time passed quickly. Half a month had passed, and the cold wind was biting cold. Snowballs the size of a fist fell from the sky like hailstones, covering the mountains near the worry-free manor. The flames from before had disappeared, and were replaced by ice and snow sculptures. Looking at it from afar, it had a different kind of charm. A white crane spread its wings and flew down from the red clouds in the distance. On top of it stood a young man wearing a Taoist robe. This young man's eyebrows were light, and the temperament between his brows was slightly lazy. The most puzzling thing was that the young man was obviously a cultivator, but he didn't use any power. Instead, he let the cold wind blow his Taoist robe up, and let the snowballs hit his face and body. Ga. The white crane let out a clear cry and flapped its wings. It didn't fly in a straight line, but circled in the air a few times. There were even a few times when its head was facing down. The cultivator was caught off guard, and his body slipped off the white crane's body. However, he only stepped a few feet in the air. The cultivator's body slid, and very strangely, He flashed to the left and stood firmly on the white crane's body. This cultivator wasn't angry. He used his foot to tap the white crane's neck, and scolded in a low voice. "You evil creature, you actually dare to scheme against me? Don't tell me you don't want to see Qingwan." Ga. When the white crane heard this, it immediately let out a sad cry. Its originally raised head quietly lowered and hid under its wings. It looked like it had been wronged. Okay. The cultivator didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "I was just joking with you. If I didn't bring you here, how could I snatch this job from someone else?" Ga. The white crane immediately became happy. It flapped its wings and charged toward the ice mountain even faster than before. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the mountain was getting closer. The snow became even heavier, and it almost covered the sky. Several disciples of the worry-free mountain manor flew out on their flying swords and blocked the cultivator's path. They shouted, "Which senior has come to my worry-free mountain manor? Please show your token." This young master is Gu, a mere envoy of the Southwest." The cultivator smiled and threw a golden token to the cultivator in front of him. The cultivator took the token and looked at it before respectfully saying, "Lord Envoy, please wait a moment. I'll go report to the manor master." "Okay, thank you." The nascent soul cultivator named Gu had a good temper. He smiled and waved his hand. After the cultivator took the token and left, Gu smiled and said, "We don't need to wait here. Let's slowly fly over." "Senior, please." The patrolling disciples didn't dare to say anything. They looked at each other and agreed. Gu flew down from the white crane's back and flew a few feet forward. The white crane was a little impatient at the side. With a long cry, it spread its wings and flew towards the worry-free manor. At the same time, a similar cry could be heard from within the manor. Caw. A ball of green light appeared from the snowstorm. Yi Yun's Qingwan seemed to have sensed the arrival of the white crane and also flew out. Upon hearing Qingwan's cry, the white crane moved like lightning, breaking through the snow several times faster than before and landing beside Qingwan. Ga. The blue wan chirped happily, flapping its wings and dancing in the air. The white crane also chirped happily, flapping its wings and dancing with the blue wan. For a moment, the sky above worry-free mountain villa was filled with light and shadows. The wind weakened, and the snow disappeared. When the patrolling disciples saw this, they were even more relieved. They smiled and felt warmth in their hearts. "Lord Envoy." Since the Qingwan came out, Yi Yun wouldn't be far away. Just as Ji was waiting, Yi Yun, Bai Jun Feng, and company also flew out from the worry-free mountain manor. Before they got close, Bai Jun Feng's face was filled with shock as he shouted, "Why did you personally come?" After Bai Jun Feng, Yu Biqiong's mouth revealed a trace of jealousy. She glanced at Yi Yun, who had an unnatural expression, and smiled. "Senior brother Bai, what are you saying? The worry-free mountain manor is not a dragon's lair or a tiger's den. Why can't Lord Envoy come? Moreover, if the worry-free mountain manor is really a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, Lord Envoy should come here for our safety." The Qingwan and the white crane were dancing in the sky. Bai Jun Feng wasn't blind, so how could he not know? He only smiled and didn't say anything. Ji didn't hide it. He looked at Yi Yun and asked, "Yi Yun, did it go smoothly this time? You still have old injuries, so you don't have to work too hard." As he spoke, he took out a jade bottle and handed it over. He said with concern, "This is the emerald firefly pill I asked for from Lord Alliance Master. It's very useful for recovering the primordial spirit. Why don't you take it?" "Lord." Yi Yun didn't take the emerald firefly pill. Instead, she said respectfully, "Junior's injuries can't be healed by ordinary pills. Junior thanks Lord for your concern." Ji frowned. He didn't know why Yi Yun was suddenly so cold. His hand froze in the air. He didn't know whether to take it back or pass the jade bottle to Yi Yun. "Junior brother Ji, why are you here?" Just as Ji was feeling awkward, a voice came from the worry-free mountain manor. Another late nascent soul stage cultivator flew out. This cultivator had the appearance of an old man. He wore a royal blue robe and looked like an ordinary rich man. However, there were several valiant golden core stage cultivators following behind him. Each of them had an imposing appearance and looked extraordinary. Senior Brother Gao. Ji took the opportunity to keep the jade bottle and flew up. He cupped his hands and smiled at the cultivator. Junior hasn't seen Senior Brother in a long time. I specially came to see you, Tisk. Senior Brother Gao looked at the blue swan and white crane in the sky and pursed his lips. How can I not know what you're thinking? Come, since you're here, why don't you stay in my worry-free mountain manor for a few days and let the blue swan and white crane have a good time together? Ji blushed slightly and said embarrassedly, Senior Brother, you're joking. Junior actually wanted to stay in your Shangri-La for a few more days. However, Lord Special Envoy has ordered that cultivators who want to participate in the selection should hurry to the designated place to participate in the training. Oh? Senior Brother Gao looked up at the snowy sky and asked in confusion, this snowstorm is so heavy. I'm afraid the Wuming Mountain Range is also very cold. Why is Lord Alliance Master so anxious? Ji shrugged and replied, Junior Brother doesn't know about that. Junior Brother is only responsible for sending the cultivators who want to participate in the selection. Since that's the case, Junior Brother, please wait for a moment. I'll get the disciples to inform the two of them. Senior Brother Gao nodded. 2. Ji was stunned and looked at Senior Brother Gao in disbelief. He then turned to look at Bai Junfeng and the others and asked curiously, just 2 cultivators? Bai Junfeng smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, My lord, you should know that the Heavenly Alliance now has complete nascent soul cultivation methods. Who would still risk their lives in the Lost Land? To tell you the truth, when we were in Tong Lake City that day, we had already recruited 23 nascent soul early stage and mid-stage nascent soul seniors. They all agreed to return to the Immortal Alliance with us. We even registered their names. However, just as we were about to set off, Senior Zhang sent the cultivation method jade slips to the auction in Tong Lake City. When these seniors received the news, they didn't say a word to us and immediately rushed to the auction on the 9th floor. We couldn't stop them. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and... Chapter 4960. At this point, Bai Junfeng looked at the worry-free manor in the snow and lowered his voice. As for these 2 seniors, I've deceived them. Then, Bai Junfeng explained the whole story. Finally, he said, these 2 seniors are rogue cultivators. They had just arrived in Tong Lake City and hadn't heard any news about the cultivation technique jade slips before they were brought out of Tong Lake City by us. Then, we rushed to Worry-Free Manor without stopping. They shouldn't have heard any other news. Bai Junfeng naturally didn't dare to hide the fact that Bai Fei and Yi Yun knew each other. Although he didn't hide anything in his words, how could the sensitive Ji Yu not know what he wanted to know? Facing Ji Yu's gaze, Yi Yun lowered her head naturally. Everything was understood without words. Ji Yu already understood why Yi Yun treated him like that. He. Ji Yu smiled and said, the Defeat Valley Immortal Alliance has always been open and aboveboard. Why should we hide these things? Although the Heaven Alliance already has a cultivation method, it's still a cultivation method for spiritual roots. No one knows if the current cultivators can use it. Going to the Lost Land is a bright path. Instead of hiding, why don't we just tell them directly and let them decide whether they want to go or not? Ahem. Senior Brother Gao coughed and said, Junior Brother, don't be angry. After all, this was the Alliance head's arrangement. I heard that the other disciples didn't find many suitable cultivators, and Bai Junfeng and the others only found these 2 fellow Taoists after going through untold hardships. If you drive them away with a single sentence, not only will you be guilty, even Bai Junfeng and the others won't be able to do anything. Moreover, the Alliance Master sent a total of 5 special envoys this time. If we don't find many cultivators, won't the special envoys be defeated by the other special envoys? All right, all right. Ji Yu thought for a while and glanced at Yi Yun. He waved his hand impatiently and said, I'll listen to you and treat me as a mute. The disciples of Worry-Free Manor left, and not long after, Xiaohua and Bai Fei flew over. Senior Marshal Brother Gao smiled and greeted, I am Gao Xian, the Manor Lord of Worry-Free Manor. When the two Dao friends came, I wasn't in the manor. When this old man returned, he wanted to pay a visit to the two of you. However, seeing that the two of you were cultivating diligently, this old man did not dare to disturb you. I am truly sorry. Naturally, Bai Fei was the first to speak. He smiled and returned the greeting. Manor Master Gao, you're too kind. We're the ones who are sorry to have disturbed your manor. Moreover, your union has given us such a precious opportunity. We can't even thank you enough. Don't you agree, Daoist Master Xiao? Of course, of course. Xiaohua's gaze moved from the green wan and white crane to Bai Fei with a meaningful look. He smiled and said, not to mention going to that place, just being able to meditate in this picturesque villa is also I's fortune. Bai Fei naturally saw the intimacy between the green wan and white crane. The reason why Ji Yu didn't recall the white crane was probably to let him see it. However, Bai Fei ignored it and chatted cheerfully with Gao Xian and Xiaohua. It could be seen how scheming he was. Yi Yun naturally wanted to recall the green wan, but the white crane didn't leave, so she didn't dare to act rashly. After Bai Fei appeared, she had been paying attention to Bai Fei's expression. However, Bai Fei's gaze only swept past the two spiritual birds, and there was no special change. Only then did Yi Yun's heart gradually relax. This old man wanted to keep the two Dao friends for a few more days, but Lord Union is thirsty for talent. This. Gao Xian raised his hand and pointed at Ji Yu. Lord Union specially invited Junior Marshal Brother Ji Yu of our Immortal Alliance to welcome you. He didn't even give you time to set up a farewell banquet. It seems that this old man is destined to be rude. Greetings, Lord Union Envoy. Bai Fei respectfully said rudely to Ji Yu. His eyes slightly narrowed, and there was an indescribable meaning in his gaze. Xiaohua smiled and casually cupped his hands at the side. However, at this moment, no one would care about Xiaohua. They all looked at Bai Fei and Ji Yu. Sure enough, when Bai Fei bowed, Ji Yu didn't return the greeting. Instead, he looked straight at Bai Fei, his gaze like lightning, and his expression like frost. Bai Fei's figure was like a mountain, and his etiquette was thorough. He didn't get up, as if he was waiting and looking forward to it. Ahem. How could Gao Xian let Ji Yu be rude here? He hurriedly coughed twice and said, Junior Marshal Brother Ji, it's getting late. Since you want to hurry back, why don't you set off now? I won't let you enter the manor. Huh, fellow Dao Bai, please get up. Ji Yu seemed to have woken up. Although there was a smile on his mouth, there wasn't much of a smile on his face. He raised his hand and said, I just had some opportunities and made a few more steps in my cultivation. Actually, I'm about the same age as you, so there's no need to be so polite. It turns out that Lord Union Envoy is a genius from the heavens. Then I'm even more disrespectful. Bai Fei's mouth slightly revealed an imperceptible sneer. He hurriedly put on a fake smile and flattered him. I don't dare. Ji Yu said proudly, there are countless capable people in the Heavenly Alliance. My opportunity is nothing. As long as you go to the Lost Land, you'll have more opportunities. Phew. Hearing that Ji Yu's words were reliable, Gao Xian breathed a sigh of relief. He looked around and said, Go, bring me the spiritual wine. I'll give you 3 toasts and send Junior Marshal Brother Ji off. Although Gao Xian was toasting the 3 nascent soul cultivators, Bai Junfeng and the others naturally couldn't be left behind. Gao Xian raised his wine cup and clinked glasses with Ji Yu, Bai Fei, Xiaohua, Bai Junfeng and the others. Yi Yun stayed behind, and Gao Xian even looked at Yi Yun meaningfully. Yi Yun felt unnatural, as if there was a thorn in her back. However, she felt helpless in her heart. She knew Ji Yu's infatuation, and she was even grateful that Ji Yu came all the way to pick her up. However, things had changed with the passage of time. Now was not the time. She could only smile apologetically and was speechless, seeing that Ji Yu left with Bai Fei and the others. Gao Xian shook his head with a bitter smile. As a bystander, he could only feel sorry for Ji Yu, who was a late nascent soul cultivator. Ji Yu flew for more than 10 miles and was far away from the worry-free manor. He immediately raised his hand and the white crane flew down from the sky and landed in front of his feet. Ji Yu stepped on it and saw that the green one also landed beside the white crane. He smiled and said to Yi Yun, "Little Yi, let them take the flying boat. You follow me on the spiritual bird." Ji Yu didn't call her Little Yi in front of Gao Xian and the others. Now that he called her, it was naturally provocative. Ji Yu even glanced at Bai Fei. It wasn't out of Ji Yu's expectations. Bai Fei's eyes twitched a few times. Unfortunately, what Ji Yu didn't expect was that Yi Yun actually said respectfully, "Senior Ji, this junior can take the flying boat with Senior Bai and the others." As she said that, Yi Yun waved at the green wand, wanting to keep the green wand into the spirit storage ring. However, the green wand and the white crane were very close. No matter how Yi Yun waved, it didn't move at all. It only flapped its wings and moved closer to the white crane. Xiao Hua laughed secretly. "Damn it, when we rushed over from Tong Lake City, we were in a hurry. Now, there's a good show to watch." "All right." Ji Yu helplessly flew down from the white crane and instructed by Jun Feng, "This old man will also take the flying boat. By Jun Feng, take out the flying boat." "Yes, yes." Bai Jun Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He hurriedly took out the flying boat and respectfully asked Ji Yu to go first. His flying boat was probably the first time it felt so cramped. "Senior Sister Yu." Seeing Bai Fei and Ji Yu staring at each other, although they didn't speak, the atmosphere was very tense. From time to time, the two of them would look at her. Yi Yun's heart was filled with sweetness and awkwardness. She couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "How about you accompany me on the green one?" "Hee hee." Yu Biqiong laughed, "Your green one has been on a diet for the sake of the white crane. She can't stand Senior Sister. You can take the district envoy's white crane." Yi Yun bit her lips and looked at Ji Yu. Looking at Ji Yu's pitiful pleading, Ji Yu couldn't refuse no matter what. He sighed in his heart and raised his head. "Go ahead, caw caw." Yu Biqiong and Yi Yun got on the white crane and the green one. The two spiritual birds let out two clear cries and spread their wings. Bai Jun Feng reminded, "Senior, this junior, hurry up, what are you waiting for?" Seeing Yi Yun's figure flying away, Ji Yu couldn't help but scold. "Yes, yes." Bai Jun Feng hurriedly urged the flying shuttle to chase after the spiritual birds. Without Yi Yun on the flying shuttle, the atmosphere was much better. Ji Yu glanced at Bai Fei and suddenly turned to ask with a smile, "Daoist Master Xiao, your Dharma name sounds very unfamiliar. Where are you from?" "Oh. Why do you think that I must be a rogue cultivator?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. Ji Yu glanced at Bai Fei and said, "The teleportation tunnel to the lost place is very dangerous. My chief has been there before and almost fell into it. I think that as long as one has a foundation and a sect, one wouldn't choose to go there. Since you all thought of it, there's a high chance that you're a rogue cultivator." "Congratulations, you're right." Xiao Hua smiled. "I and Daoist Master Bai are both rogue cultivators. I'm a rogue cultivator from the Guangqing Immortal Alliance. What about you?" Ji Yu didn't even take Xiao Hua seriously. Xiao Hua's words went in one ear and out the other. He only looked at Bai Fei and asked. Bai Fei replied indifferently, "I am a rogue cultivator from the Illusion Immortal Alliance." "Oh. Illusionary Police Immortal Alliance?" Ji Yu asked curiously, "Isn't the Illusionary Police Immortal Alliance not far from our Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance? How did you get here?" Bai Fei looked at Ji Yu unhappily and said, "Fellow Daoist Ji, let's not talk about how big the Yi Lin continent is, but my Heaven Alliance. I'm afraid there are 72 immortal alliances, right? I seem to have to report to the lords of the Defeat You Immortal Alliance about where I am traveling, right? Then where are you cultivating in the Illusion Immortal Alliance? Jiyu curled his lips slightly and asked again, I need to know your background. I forgot. Bai Fei said casually. I'll tell you when I remember. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, gift it, and... Chapter 4961. Damn it. Jiyu simply threw away his identity as the prefectural envoy and cursed in a low voice. How could you forget where you cultivate? Are you deliberately making fun of this young master? Bai Fei rolled his eyes and replied, What's wrong? Fellow Taoist, you just realized it now. Damn it. Xiaohua originally wanted to say a few words of advice, but the more he saw the more ridiculous the two were talking, the more like two young men fighting over a lover. He cursed in his heart, and with a flash of his body, he landed at the tail of the flying shuttle and sat down cross-legged. His mind entered the space. He and the Thunderbolt Immortal had already deduced the primordial spirit cultivation method to the last step of the unifying the way. It was really crucial. How could he have the time to talk nonsense with these two little things? Seeing Xiaohua leave, Bai Junfeng was a little dumbfounded. He drove the flying shuttle, not daring to slack off. He could only listen and watch. This was a secret of nascent soul cultivators fighting over a woman. He didn't know if Jiyu and Bai Fei would kill him to prevent him from leaking the secret after arriving at the place. Bai Junfeng's worries were naturally groundless. Bai Fei and Jiyu confronted each other like fighting cocks. Except for a few words of sarcasm, they didn't really fight. After flying for more than 10 days, Bai Junfeng's heart finally relaxed when he saw a flying shuttle about 1,000 feet in size in the sky in front of him. On the body of the flying shuttle, countless runes were engraved. These runes formed the shape of clouds and mist. The nearby spiritual chi of heaven and earth rushed in, and the runes emitted a faint brilliance. Thus, the clouds began to overflow and the mist began to spread. The huge flying shuttle had a kind of momentum that seemed to be activated. Many disciples stood at the edge of the flying boat. They were all wearing bright armor and holding spear-shaped celestial weapons. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the sky not only crashed into the flying boat, but also fell on their bright armor. Naturally, there were talisman scripts on the bright armor. These talisman scripts were very agile, swimming on the armor like tadpoles. These talisman scripts even floated out of the light of the bright armor and connected in midair. A murderous magic formation had been quietly set up on the flying boat. Yi Yun and Yu Biqiong were riding the white crane and the blue Luan in front of the flying shuttle. When they saw the flying shuttle, they had already stopped their spiritual birds and landed on both sides of the shuttle. Even so, there were still disciples on patrol descending from the sky and blocking the shuttle. A disciple in the late Golden Core stage in front asked sternly, Who are you? I'm the special envoy of the Northwest 2nd District. Jiyu couldn't vent his anger on Bai Fei. Hearing the disciples on patrol's unkind tone, he was already angry. He jumped up from the flying shuttle and roaring, What? You won't let me pass? As he spoke, he released the pressure of a late nascent soul stage cultivator. How could the group of Golden Core stage cultivators withstand his pressure? They all trembled and were about to fall to the ground. So powerful, so murderous, so powerful. Bai Fei said coldly on the flying shuttle, He's just a disciple on patrol. He's just following the rules. Look at your token. Do you have to be so ruthless? Isn't he just a late nascent soul stage senior? How dare you trample the rules of the Immortal Alliance under your feet? Yi Yin also quickly flew up and tried to resist the nascent soul stage pressure. She whispered, Gee. Lord, this is the special envoy's flying shuttle. We don't dare to be rash. Humph. Seeing Yi Yun fly over, Jiyu had long retracted his nascent soul pressure with a pained heart. However, He still fiercely glared at the few golden core disciples and said, "Since you are a patrolling disciple, you should properly ask questions. Why are you roaring like this for no reason? Do you think you're all evil?" With that, Ji raised his hand and threw the token to the golden core stage disciple. The disciple was confused. He didn't know what he said wrong. Whenever a disciple of the Immortal Alliance approached the Special Envoy's flying shuttle, they would sternly shout as usual. First, to remind them to slow down. Second, to remind the flying shuttle to be on guard. Who knew what was wrong with this nascent soul stage cultivator today? However, looking at the token in his hand, Jiyu was a real district envoy. Even if he was one level higher than them, they couldn't do anything about it. They could only smile and say, "District envoy, this junior has neglected you. This way please, Jiyu wasn't an arrogant person. After getting angry, he regretted it. Seeing the disciple on patrol respectfully, he took the token and nodded. Just as he was about to follow the disciple onto the Special Envoy's flying shuttle, another small shuttle flew over. The Golden Core stage disciple immediately flew up and sternly shouted, "Who's there?" Unfortunately, he only shouted, "Who's there?" before remembering the awkwardness from before. He didn't dare to say, "Who's there?" loudly, and his voice became much softer, making it sound really strange. Disciple Su Xia. On the flying boat, a female gold core cultivator with a mediocre face and a slightly plump body quickly flew out. She handed over the token and respectfully said, "I'm here on the orders of the special envoy to bring the 3 seniors here." The Golden Core stage disciple on patrol took the token and looked at it. He simply said in a warm voice, "Fellow Daoist Su, you've worked hard. Please invite the 3 seniors over. It just so happens that there are 2 seniors here. You can all board the special envoy's flying shuttle together." The woman called Su Xia was slightly stunned. She had never heard the disciple on the special envoy's flying shuttle speak so softly. She couldn't help but look at the Golden Core stage disciple. Aside from confusion, there was also a hint of a smile in her eyes. The Golden Core stage disciple was startled and hurriedly scolded, "Hurry up, don't make the seniors anxious." "Yes, yes." Only then did Su Xia hurriedly withdraw her gaze and turn to land on the flying shuttle. Xiaohua clearly saw that the flying shuttle was similar to the one under his feet. There were 3 cultivators on it, 1 in the middle stage of nascent soul stage and 2 in the early stage of nascent soul stage. The middle stage nascent soul stage cultivator was an old man with a ruddy complexion and 5 strands of long beard fluttering in the wind. He had a rather sage-like appearance. However, that middle stage nascent soul stage cultivator didn't cause Xiaohua's gaze to linger on him. Xiaohua swept a glance at him, but his gaze landed on the last 2 early stage nascent soul stage cultivators who walked out from the flying shuttle. The early stage nascent soul stage cultivator in the front was a tall man with a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes, similar to a farmer in the countryside. However, when Xiaohua looked at this man, his face unconsciously revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He secretly muttered in his heart, "Damn it, what's all this? Our human race's Daoist sects went to the Lost Land to search for a chance of survival. Why are all these filthy things here? What does this have to do with them? Do you think that the Yilin continent's human race's Daoist sects are flourishing, that the Xiaoyu continent is a place where you can do whatever you want?" Xiaohua's gaze swept across this man, and then landed on the last nascent soul stage cultivator. This cultivator was a woman, but this woman's appearance was covered by a snow-white handkerchief. Her appearance couldn't be seen clearly. However, just from the curves of the naked body wrapped under the snow-white clothes, no one would doubt that this woman had exceptional beauty. The moment this woman walked out of the flying shuttle, all the male cultivators' gazes were attracted. However, Xiaohua's gaze only paused for a moment before moving away again. He frowned slightly, and unconsciously muttered in his heart, "Damn it, what's going on? When did the Xiaoyu continent become a hot commodity? Not to mention the Immortal Alliance master who wants to go over, the devil race also wants to go over. Now that a demon race has appeared, she actually also wants to go over? This silver-white wolf race, what is she going over for? Xiaohua was gloomy, but that patrolling Golden Core stage disciple seemed to have awoken from a dream. He hurriedly moved his gaze away from the female cultivator's snow-white body with difficulty, and respectfully said, "Seniors, this way please." Xiaohua and the rest boarded the flying shuttle. That middle stage nascent soul stage old man looked at Xiaohua and Bai Fei, and cupped his hands, saying, "Fellow cultivators, I am Daoist Yuan Kong, may I know how to address you too?" "Hee, this one is Bai Fei." Bai Fei greeted people with ease. Seeing Daoist Yuan Kong looking over, he had already gone up to greet him. Xiaohua also smiled, saying, "This one is Daoist Xiao, hee, looks like fellow cultivator Bai is the leader of the two." Daoist Yuan Kong smiled, and turned to the other two cultivators, saying, "Fellow cultivators, please come over. Since we are fated to board the special envoy's flying shuttle together, why don't we join hands? What do you think? This one is Zhuang Chen, greetings fellow cultivators." That farmer cultivator said. The masked silver wolf respectfully said, "This one is Beauty Yu, greetings fellow cultivators." Beauty Yu? Bai Fei smiled and returned the greeting, saying, "Fellow cultivator, your name is indeed like your person. Fellow cultivator, please don't laugh at me." Beauty Yu's voice was slightly hoarse, not ethereal and clear. However, this hoarse voice, in the ears of men, made them even more fantastical and even more sexy. Fellow cultivator Bai. After the 5 nascent soul stage cultivators finished greeting each other, Jiyu, who was not far away, said with a smile, "This old man has already sent you all to the special envoy's flying shuttle. This old man has already completed his mission. Next, the special envoy's subordinate disciples will receive you all. This old man wishes you a smooth selection, haha." With that said, Jiyu waved his hand and said to Yi Yun, "Yu Biqiong, and the other disciples, follow this old man." Yi Yun looked at Bai Fei and nodded slightly. Her eyes were filled with concern, and then she followed Jiyu. Fellow cultivator Bai. Seeing Bai Fei looking at Jiyu, Daoist Yuan Kong was somewhat puzzled, saying, "You are familiar with this late-stage nascent soul stage senior? He's just a lunatic, who knows him?" Bai Fei was not afraid of Jiyu hearing him and said with a cold smile. He even looked at Jiyu's back. Sure enough, Jiyu's figure stopped slightly as if he wanted to turn around. However, when he saw Yi Yun, who had her head lowered and was somewhat unhappy, he did not turn his head around in the end. Damn it! Xiaohua narrowed his eyes. He was somewhat puzzled and thought to himself, what is this Bai Fei doing? Isn't he always cautious? Why is he so reckless today? Shoo! Daoist Yuan Kong hurriedly put his hand to his mouth and reminded, "Fellow cultivator Bai, don't be angry. We still need to borrow the power of the Defeat Oak Immortal Alliance to go to the abandoned land." Hee, this one was rash, sorry. Bai Fei smiled and did not say anything else. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect a gift, and thank you for all forms of support. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.